call to order the Planning Commission meeting of June 10th. Ask if we could please take the roll, Mr. Paulson.
Commissioner Kane,
Here.
Commissioner Erickson,
Here.
Commissioner Talasfor,
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Here.
Vice Chair Benami,
Here.
Chair Birch,
Here.
Commissioner Hanson,
Here. Good timing. All right, I would like ask everybody to please stand and join Commissioner Erickson in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty.
Thank you. The town of Los Gatos strongly encourages active participation in the public process, which is a cornerstone of democracy and essential to the Planning Commission conducting its business on behalf of the town council and the citizens of this town. There are several ways for members of the public to participate. One, written comments about agenda items submitted to the staff prior to meetings are always very welcome and helpful. Two, at meetings of the commission, there are two opportunities for publics to participate. During the verbal communication period, an individual may speak on any topic which is not on the agenda. And two, any member of the public may speak during the public hearing of an agenda item. If you wish to address the commission tonight during the verbal communication period or during the consideration of an agenda item, I'm going to ask that you please fill out a speaker card. They're located on the back of the benches there. You turn them into the staff. Please print your name clearly, and by any chance, if you have a difficult to pronounce last name, if you could even phonetically give that to me, that would help out a lot. And for anyone that intends to speak this evening, I would ask that you come up to the podium, make sure the microphone is close to your mouth so we can hear you clearly, state your name for the record, and we will keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. Our first item is approval of the minutes for May 13th, 2015. These were distributed in our packet tonight. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Commissioner Talasfor?
Yes, although I was absent, I did review the meeting, so I feel like I can vote on these minutes, and I'd be happy to make a motion.
I'm going to disclose that I also was absent, but I did also review the meeting and listen to it, so I feel I can vote. Commissioner Erickson?
I was also absent, and I'd like to, not that we don't like our other commissioners, and I would like to commend the fellow commissioners who were here for their excellent work on that night. And I watched you on replay, and it was even better than what was available on ABC, CBS, or NBC when I was watching.
Good job, everyone. Commissioner Kane?
If I'm out, do I have to say stuff like that when I
Yes.
come back?
Yes, you
Well, I
have.
was here, and I intend to vote on the minutes, and I make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right.
So,
Commissioner Talasfor?
yeah, so shall I go ahead with my motion?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I will propose that we approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting, May 13th, 2015.
Commissioner Kane, do you have a second?
I'll second it. I thought I made the motion. Is Commissioner Talasfor here tonight?
All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Are there any written communications this evening?
no,
All right, and I do not believe we have any requested continuances also.
correct.
All right. In addition to their loyal service to the Planning Commissioner, members of the commission serve on a number of town committees. Do we have any reports to give tonight? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, as you know, the chair and I attended a meeting today of the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee. We considered one matter, which I think is a major matter, is a proposal to redevelop part of Alberto Way, right at the corner of Highway of Los Gatos Saratoga Boulevard, numbered 401 to 409. There's a proposal that the square footage there be essentially tripled. And so we listened to the proposals, we made comments, and ultimately, and I should also say that the applicant said they would do an environmental impact report. So we anticipate that that project will be coming before us.
Thank you. Do we have any other reports? Commissioner Telesfor?
Not a report, but a question. So about that project that you reviewed, is there something there already? I can't remember.
Yes.
Is there a building there
There's been,
already?
well, there are several buildings, and they've been there for 50 years. It's been there. So, yeah, something is there, but they propose to tear it down. They propose to put in 2 levels of underground parking. There will be, the surface area will be much more covered than it is presently, but all within the guidelines. The floor area ratio will be 0.49 when 0.50 is allowed. It's pretty close. And as I said, it's about 98,000 square feet, which on a 99,000 square foot lot. So it's a very ambitious project.
All right. Any other reports? Seeing none. We're now going to move to the verbal communications portion of our meeting. As I mentioned, members of the public are invited to speak on any item which is not on tonight's agenda. When you come to the podium, please, again, pull the microphone close, state your name. You will have 3 minutes. I have 1 card. John Shepherd's. Okay, that's not what he wrote. You didn't even write your whole name, John. I'll fix it for you. Done.
I think Mr. Schultz knows my name. But the chair should know, so I apologize.
I got it.
All right. So I have something for the overhead. Thank you. What this is this is a document that was created by the staff, and what we have here is the Santa Clara County contract cities, and I've circled there to the left the Cupertino, and you really can't see it very well, but I've summarized it down below, and our police department per citizen is about $467, and in Cupertino, the cost of the sheriff is about $160 per citizen. So the differential between the two is about $300 per citizen, and if we multiply that by about 30,000 citizens in Los Gatos, we come up with a figure of $9 million annually that potentially we could save by contracting with the sheriff. And, you know, some argue that Saratoga is not a good analogous or a good comparison because they're not as perhaps vibrant, but Cupertino certainly is, and they have more bars than us if the perception is that the bars create more crime. They have Apple Computer there, so the crown jewels of the internet world. And of course, the response times overall are faster in Cupertino than here in Los Gatos. And according to SafeWise, it's a safer community. So I've kind of continued to sort of press this issue because, and people have different feelings. Some people are very much, you know, want a local police department. And frankly, if it was close, I wouldn't even be talking. But the delta here in terms of potential monetary savings is so big that I think it makes it worthwhile that we have a comprehensive third-party review of our police budget and compare it with the sheriff option. Because what we have is we're looking at opportunity costs. If we're spending it on the police department, then it becomes real serious when we don't have the $9 million to fix the Almond Grove streets. And that's why at the last meeting before the town council, I said effectively, in my opinion, we're broke because we have a $9 million debt that we cannot pay. And it's serious because our own town report says that the streets are at the end of their life. There's shatter slabs and there's potential liability. So we're looking at lawsuits. So, there's a notion that if it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, if it is broken, let's take a hard look at finding ways to fix it. And maybe it's staying with our police department and looking for more efficient ways within our police department. But I think that it's something that we should look at as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Erickson?
So I appreciate the information as a citizen. And as you know, the province of the Planning Commission is land use. So I was trying to figure out, is there a land use issue buried in this someplace? So and that's the reason that I'm missing, that's the reason why you're bringing it to this body?
Well, it's a good question, and it's
It's intended to be a yes/no question, and if there is one, I'd like to know what it is.
well, I've spoken with Laurel Peretti about this issue. I mean, if a question is asked of me, you can ask it in a yes/no way, but I can answer it as a citizen the way I think is appropriate, and it's not just a yes/no answer, and so it's multifaceted. And the first point I want to make is that it is a land use issue because of this very point. For example, with the Albright project, it seemed to me that one of the arguments that was made was that we need to develop that in a big way because we need those monies to fund town services. And if we are dependent on these large projects because we have so much spent on our police department, then what we have is a situation where the town these projects come for us and we opt for the bigger project because we need to fund town services. And it ends up in a scaling up process because then when you go larger commercial, like the Albright project, then what comes back like maybe 7 years later is ABAG and RENA, and they say, well, since you've got now more jobs in town, then you've got to bring in more housing. And then when you bring in more housing, then you have impacts on traffic, infrastructure, and we know that as a general proposition, residential is a net draw against town resources. So then you have to come back with more commercial because it's a net draw against town resources, and it ends up being a scaling up. And that's why I fear, and that's why I've been pressing this in this way, is I fear that if we don't get a handle on this issue, that in terms of land use, we will scale up and we will lose sight of our existence as a town. And we will have the name of Town of Los Gatos, but we will be effectively a city. And that's why if we can get a handle on this, then we're not as dependent on these larger projects, and we at least slow the flow, and we are not so controlled by ABAG and those RENA requirements. And then the second point...
Mr. Shepherdson, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut this just because we are set to an agenda.
Okay.
But we thank you very much for the information.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm now going to move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. I am going to make a little change to it. We're going to take agenda item number 2 first because we have a commissioner that's going to need to recuse himself, and it's going to work a little bit better. So I'm actually going to now consider our first item, which is conditional use permit U-15-001, requesting approval for an auto body repair and paint shop on property zoned LM at 657 University Avenue. May I see a show of hands of commissioners that have visited the site? Great. Are there any disclosures on this particular item? None? Ms. Puga, I understand you're going to be giving the report for us.
Correct. Good evening, commissioners. The applicant is proposing to operate an auto body and paint service shop in a vacant 3,015 square foot commercial space. The existing building has been divided into 2 separate tenant spaces with an auto body shop and towing use operating at 657 Industrial. The hours of operation for the proposed auto body and paint shop are from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m., 7 days a week. The applicant has proposed 1 working bay and 1 employee, which requires a total of 3 parking spaces per our town code. The existing commercial space has no outdoor surface parking. All proposed parking spaces, which include 3 customer spaces, 1 employee space, and 1 space devoted to the working bay, would all be contained within the tenant space. All proposed parking spaces would be marked with paint to identify where customers may park their vehicle. As contained in the project description located in Exhibit 4 of your packet tonight, the applicant is proposing to operate a small operation that will offer personalized automotive repair and paint services to town residents. Staff has included conditions of approval limiting the number of employees, working bays, and requiring that all customer parking shall be accessible. This concludes staff report, and we are available for any further questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Mary.
Can you confirm that the CUP that was issued back in '97 was for the address of 657 Industrial? Because we seem to have maybe a misunderstanding over 657 University Ave that might have to do with the building space being split into 2 with 2 separate legal addresses. So, and also I'd like to know at what point that occurred.
Sure. So there is an existing CUP for 657 Industrial. And so if you look at the staff report, which is contained in the file for that address, it incorrectly said 657 University. And the following year, in 1998, a note to the file was included from the then director, Bud Lortz, stating that that staff report at that time was incorrectly addressed. And so that CUP governs Industrial and not 657 University.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Telesfor?
I do. Can you tell me what the level of service is for the intersection of Blossom Hill and University?
I unfortunately don't have that information at this
Have that
time.
information. Does anyone at staff have that at all?
We don't have that information. This is not a traffic
Well, I understand.
intensification.
Thank you. I know that. I just needed the information.
So they did fill out a traffic questionnaire with Jesse Pugh, and he was okay with it, and it didn't create any additional trips.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Hanson?
I noted that the hours of operation were from 7 till 6, including Sunday. Is that typical of businesses around there? I thought a lot of those auto businesses were closed on Sunday.
So most of the CUPs for university, they do limit them to 7 days a week. That doesn't mean they have to operate 7 days a week, but they have the option. I'm not aware of every single CUP that we've issued, but the few that I have been able to review farther down university were for 7 days a week also.
So you're saying that these hours of operation are consistent with other CUPs that you're familiar with in the same vicinity?
Correct.
Okay, and then I also noted that in the conditions of approval, the number of employees was 1, and that seemed like a pretty small number to operate a business. Is that in addition to the management, or?
So no, that's just 1 employee. The applicant is Gary Nishida, and he can probably talk to you more about where that 1 employee came from. But that was also from working with staff into something we could be comfortable with parking-wise, since it is a limited space.
Okay, and then my third question was exactly that about parking. I mean, that area is very difficult. I myself went down there to visit one of the, and I had to park half a block away. And so you're satisfied that the parking relative to the amount of business that they expect to have in this location is going to be satisfactory, and it's all within the site? Right?
It is all within the site, and the spaces that will be marked with paint do meet our town code definition for parking space dimensions. Based on the backup, we feel comfortable that he'll be able to manage the situation with incoming vehicles and leaving vehicles.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I look at the plan correctly, there's only 1 working bay.
Correct.
So if he has more than 2 cars that need repair, what do you do with the second car?
So the working bay limits him to only working on one vehicle at a time in that space. So if he has more vehicles coming, they'll need to be stored in the customer parking until they can be moved to the working bay to be worked on.
So you can take up all the customer parking by putting vehicles in there?
Possibly, he would have to manage how many cars he's taking at a time.
Wouldn't that then violate the whole point of having the parking? I mean, you're saying you could have no parking because you have good business.
So if I can offer, maybe that's a good comment for we understand the question, a good comment for how the applicant proposes to manage that operation. Obviously, with one employee, I would assume that his work would be limited, but we'll provide an answer and then we'll look through, see if there's any other provisions of code.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Kane?
Probably two minor points. In Exhibit 1, which is the surface map of the site, it shows the black dash going from university to industrial. And this business isn't on industrial. There's only one way in and out. It only goes halfway back.
Sure, so what that map is showing the parcel. So it's one parcel but two addresses.
And when you say there's no ADT, again, it's technical. I don't understand why there will be no increase to daily trips. Our literal reading says everybody walks to the business, but I know that's not the case. Is there a minimum number to get an ADT?
I'm not aware of that minimum number. Maybe Joel can speak to that.
So the previous uses are looked at by the traffic engineer, Jesse Poo. The applicant fills out a traffic questionnaire, looks at the previous uses, they get credit for those. He looks to see if there's a delta that triggers any traffic impacts from what has been approved versus what's proposed. And in this case, he found that there was not any impacts.
No increase over what had been going on previously?
Correct.
Okay. My last question just concerns a visual of the business being so close. Well, it's on the sidewalk. The door goes up, and that's the sidewalk. And then there's university itself, and I live 7 blocks away from that. That's a very, very busy intersection. There's been accidents on that corner. When I was at Vasona, there was a collision. It seems like a really busy street, and the town did a really nice job of putting in lights. So much better than what was there. In fact, the accidents I'm aware of occurred before the new system was in place. So, but what I mean visually is the door goes up, and the car is on the sidewalk. And then the car's in the street. I mean, the sidewalk is just that, and the building comes right to the sidewalk. There's no ramp. There's no warning. There's no time to see a car coming. It's just going to back out. Have we thought of, and I guess you can't prohibit it because it's been done, but have we thought about requiring any safety devices? Or is there no indication that one is required? Lights, bells, whistles?
So I don't know that that question was directly posed to the traffic engineer, but he usually looks at all aspects of that. I'm not sure if we have Ryan Fong from the engineering department, if he has any other insight. But if that's something that's a concern, we can look at placing
I
the
looked at the
condition.
other auto body shops, and they're set back so much further. And this guy's right on the sidewalk. And I drive by it twice a day. And I knew it when there were folks in there, and the ramp was up, and you could see what they were doing because it's right there. That's fine. But that's where the door is. It's right on the sidewalk. Do we need a flashing light? I don't know.
We can easily add a condition for the backup. I don't recall Jesse bringing that up as an issue of the, I think a sight distance is what you're referring to in terms of backing out so abruptly onto the sidewalk from the building.
Our commercial guidelines talk about being pedestrian friendly. I mean, it's not even residential, it's commercial guidelines. And I just don't see that blind, it's not an intersection, but that blind corner being pedestrian friendly, never mind car friendly.
And the other thing I would add is that obviously this is an existing space, so there are a number of businesses that could go in there without any requirements and would still have to operate that same way. But that is definitely something that we can look at from a traffic safety perspective as a condition of approval.
So previously, that space was used for storage of cars. That was one of them.
That was one of the
And so
uses,
that's
yes.
not a lot of, necessarily, I don't see that as being a lot of traffic. And the other use was,
So there was a contractor's office and warehouse before this. They vacated, last summer they vacated the space.
okay. I still don't see the traffic that I would see with this shop, but maybe I'm misunderstanding, and I'll talk to the applicant. It seems to me like the traffic could go up But I'll ask.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be something we're going to need to talk
Thank you.
specifically to the applicant about. Can I ask, I want to ask one quick question. One of the items that I noticed in here was a requirement that, maybe I read it wrong, that the front roll-up door is open during business hours.
Yeah.
So being as this is a facility where there will be painting and things going on, oftentimes those types of activities are accompanied by fumes. So I'm curious why the preference would be to have the roll-up door to the sidewalk open rather than require additional exhausting of the facility.
So the roll-up door is conditioned to be open so that vehicles can enter the space at all times during the business operating hours. And then that would also help with some of the fumes. The applicants can speak more to the portable spray booth, but it is a self-ventilating portable spray booth. And so that will filter those dusts and those fumes. And in addition to that, they would require review by our hazmat division, the Santa Clara County Fire Department. The hazmat division would take a look at the portable spray booth, make sure that it meets all of their ventilation requirements.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Just one comment. When it was mentioned that some other use could come in and be used, I assumed some other use would not require in general a conditional use permit, whereas in 1977, the town council specifically adopted an ordinance that said if you had a auto body shop, you have to obtain a conditional use permit. So I don't know that we can mix apples and oranges. So the fact that somebody else could come in that doesn't need a conditional use permit really has nothing to do with one that does require a use permit because the findings are different, right? Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner King?
In your report, you did say that it was not required for the door to be open during painting. You also said we should look at the applicant's business plan, and I'm having a lot of trouble with envisioning how this is all going to work with just one person. And when I think of the business plan, you know, part of that is the competition. And so this applicant wants to put his business in the middle of 5 other auto body shops. Maybe they don't do paint, maybe they don't. I mean, I've read the location map where the other 7. Is that ever a concern of the town to be cautious about putting an applicant in a place where, putting a burger joint in between 9 other burger joints? I've seen it done in Mad Magazine, but I don't know that that's a good business plan.
It's not part of our regulations or part of the findings that you would make to deny it is that there's 5 others and you're concerned that his business plan is going to fail. That wouldn't be one of your criteria that you'd make for denial.
Thank you for your report.
We have one more. Commissioner Bondami?
But to add to that, I believe we could look at intensification of use in that area.
And I think that, again, is a discussion. Let's get the applicant up so we can ask some questions. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Puga. Thanks. All right. I'm now going to invite the applicant to speak, Gary Nishita. I hope I pronounced your name right. The applicant will have 5 minutes to address the commission to discuss his plans, and then afterwards we will have some questions for him. Please, again, state your name. When the light goes yellow, you have 30 seconds, and when it's red, your time is finished.
Hi, my name is Gary Nishida, applicant for Bi-City Paint and Body. So I understand there's a lot of different questions and concerns regarding the use of the space and how it's going to work effectively and be safe. It's not very difficult to make a space like this work. I've been in the business for 15 years. I came into it with the close family friend who opened this business up in 1962 in Santa Clara. So now I came here with the opportunity that, was given to me, and I'd like to address any and all concerns you guys have. One of them being the maneuverability of the cars in and out of the space. If you look at the building plans, there's a wide open space in the middle that's purposely there, the way we laid it out, in order for us to make a 360-degree turn. So instead of backing the cars in and out of the actual space of where the garage door is onto the street, you could pull out frontwards. Second, one of the things that I wanted to do in order to, prevent any pedestrians from getting hit, other, accidents, because it is busy at that corner of University and Blossom Hill. There's one of the things I wanted to do was put mirrors up on the garage door on the left and right side. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with them, but they're round oval mirrors. A lot of parking garages use them in order for not only pedestrians that are walking or other vehicles that are out on the street, but also for the vehicle that's coming out of the space could see everywhere, and their surroundings in front of them. That way, there's, less chance of an accident. I'm not saying that, one cannot occur. I mean, every situation is different. Every person's different on their driving habits. But that's one of the safety issues that I wanted to put in there. That's not being required in, as far as, the planning's recommendation, but it's something that I would have put in myself. Regarding the use of the space, the one work bay, I know it seems small, and it is, but seeing that I've been in the business long enough, I've learned that, bigger always isn't better. My last shop was twice the size of this, and the parking lot to my shop was twice the size of that. So I understand, where there's concern that one working bay is not going to work. And that's where the portable spray booth comes in, because it works as two functions. One as not as, for painting, but also for prepping vehicles. Because a lot of, the prepping of the vehicles, there's a lot of dust from the sanding. Primers, you're supposed to spray in a spray booth, not outside anymore, and you have to be permitted to spray primers. So that portable spray booth works as both. It's considered a mobile workstation. Not only that, but that I could easily move that booth anywhere around the space as required, with the town of Los Gatos, fire department, whomever, any government agency. I've already talked to Bay Area Quality Management District. I've talked to one of their, head engineers there that's been there for 15, 20 years. He actually was the one that signed off on my spray booth permit in Santa Clara. And he was, said that it wouldn't be a problem, that I could apply for it online and I could get it within 10 minutes for it to be permitted with them. Now, I know that doesn't, say that I could be permitted with other agencies, but they're one of the ones that govern all the permits in the Bay Area for spray booths and any kind of coatings. As far as the traffic impact, I did, speak to Jesse Poo. That was the first thing I did before I even signed a lease, before I, applied with the town of Los Gatos for, my CUP permit. And he came back to me and said it wouldn't cause any, traffic impact. You're fine. Go ahead and proceed to the next step. So I don't know how much more of an impact it would already caused that's already there from, services that are involved with all the other businesses. Vasona Park is always busy, especially on weekends, where the parking, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar, down University Avenue is just taken completely. Aside from that, I don't see it being detrimental to any of the other businesses or body shops there. Everybody has their own customer and clientele base, and as long as you do the work, accordingly and, keep your customers happy, they're not going to jump ship to another, facility. They're going to stay loyal. I've learned that over the, the years being in business, and that's it. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Badami?
So are you relocating your business to Los Gatos, or is this considered a secondary or satellite location?
No, this would be, I closed it in Santa Clara a few years ago, so this would be reopening it here in Los Gatos.
Okay, and you have one employee that you plan to employ 7 days a week without any break?
7 days a week is just an option, and it's not necessarily for working on cars. It could be just delivering cars, to the customers, because a lot of people can't get, to the business, after hours of, from work. Everybody's schedule nowadays varies. So a lot of customers I found it's more convenient for them to pick it up on the weekends when they don't have work. And then another thing would be, for estimates, it's, again, it's more convenient on the weekends as opposed to during the week for most customers I found.
One last question, Madam Chair, if I may. So back to this one employee, you're also going to be there on site?
Correct.
Okay, because for the one employee that you have, that's a lot of work. Being an estimator, prepping the body with Bondo, spray painting, accounting, receptionist, estimator. Usually you see more employees that are trained as technicians in different specialties. So I'm trying to understand how you can do all this with just one employee.
Right. So, like I said, I've been doing this for quite a number of years, and over the years, it's been hard, to keep, a lot of the employees that I've had, because there were a lot of like older generation employees that at the end of it came to retirement, and then trying to keep, new employees. Everybody goes to wherever the shop, whatever shop is busy in this industry. So I had to learn to be, more self-sufficient to do as much as I possibly can on my own. And being that I'm mechanically inclined myself, it was just a natural thing for me to pick up and learn and just do. I'm not saying that I'm going to be doing everything 100%, because there are there are things that I can't do, where I have to sublease it, where a subcontractor comes in, to do the work, or it goes out to their facility, and that's common in the business to operate like that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Telesford, then Commissioner Kane.
Thank you. So let's sort of get back to your business and draw me a picture of it. How many cars a day, a week, do you entertain that you'll have? Take me through this. Is it one car a day? Do you, and let me ask two other questions, and you can just wrap it into your explanation. Do you, when you do evaluations, you have to bring the customer inside as well?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so just answer the whole business.
Because I've had to learn to be self-sufficient, so one of the things that I try to do is I try to make it more convenient for the customer. There's some that can't get off work in time, don't want to drive this way, or are at home because they can't drive because the car's immobile. So I try to make myself available, either myself or I, send somebody out to go to their home, office, wherever they're at, to write up the estimate there. That way they don't have to always come in. And if they do come in, then, that's where the roll-up door is open, where they come in. I could do the mobile estimate inside the facility. I'm sorry, can you repeat the rest?
Oh,
There's a little
okay.
bit.
Yeah, no, so I wanted to know that. And then also, well, I can't imagine, I would hope that it would happen to you, but would you ever turn away business because you couldn't park cars inside?
I would, and I have. I've done it in the past where I've been so busy, even with the numerous employees that I had, the shop space I had, it just became overwhelming where I just could not take any more vehicles, and I had to either send them away or refer them to another shop. And that's not uncommon in this business. I mean, I have friends in the industry just like any other business owner does. So if you get too busy and overwhelmed, then you need to send the business out unless the customer wants to wait. And there's some customers that just don't want to wait.
Okay, and then just to wrap up, so talk to me or us about the deliveries that you would have, types and truck size, et cetera.
So the deliveries would be from parts vendors. They would just pull into the space. Normally, they come in, you inspect the part, sign the invoice. If you don't have a credit account with them, you pay them, and they leave.
But what kind of, are we driving a van? Are we driving a truck? What do we drive?
It varies. It's normally either a van or a truck.
And you anticipate that they'll come into your space
Yes.
and be able to turn around?
Yes, the space, it doesn't seem that big on paper, but if you actually view the inside of it, it is very, very large.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kane, and then Commissioner
And that's what
Hanson.
I've been thinking all along. I wish we could have gotten inside that. I'm reasonably visual. So I have an accident and I call you for an appointment. I can't just show up. But yes?
You could.
Just show up.
Right, but majority of the customers that I've had over the years, they always call me ahead of time. But I've had it on occasion, yeah, they do show up. It's not uncommon.
And I pull in through the door.
Correct.
I'm the one who brings my car in, I'm the one who takes my car back out.
Correct.
Okay. Again, it would have been helpful if we could have gotten in there. I tried, it was locked. I gave up. But I would need to visualize, do I need to visualize how that's going to work from the standpoint of safety?
If you need to visualize that, then that's clearly your prerogative. And if we need to set up something where you're able to access the site, then that's always an option.
I thought I understood the business plan, and when Commissioner was speaking earlier, she was referring to an employee. And I'm thinking, you're the employee.
Well, I consider myself an employee because I would be getting my hands dirty and actually working.
But you're the one person that this CUP is talking about, is that correct?
I don't know what the planning's thought was on that. That was a little unclear to me. If it means one employee plus me, or if it's just me as a certain employee.
I think that's what's driving us, making us very curious. How does one person do everything? Run the reception, run the office, and be in the back, and if you're going to need another employee, this may prohibit you from having that other employee. Is that correct for staff?
Ms. Puga is available to answer that.
So the one employee in the staff report is referring to the applicant, Gary.
Because there's only one parking place for an employee.
Yes.
You the man. You can't, they're saying you can't have anybody else.
Well, that doesn't apply to subcontractors, though.
Where are they going to park?
I think okay. I think, Ms. Puga, I'd like to ask staff to expand a bit on this because it sounds like there may be a disconnect between the applicant's understanding and staff, and I want to make sure if we have to make a modification to the CUP and look at parking, we do so now.
So if the applicant were to have a subcontractor come into the space to work, that's considered an employee of the business, and that would need to provide parking for such employee.
So that means he can't bring in a subcontractor. Is that
Correct. He could take a car to the subcontractor's office to be worked on, but if the subcontractor were to come into the space to work, that's another employee.
May I ask a clarifying question? However, if you were not there, let's say you did not want to work 7 days a week, you want to work 5 days a week, and there's another employee that works the other 2 days a week, it's whether or not there's an employee on site, one employee on site at a time. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Kane, does that answer your question?
it brings up 10 more? Why would I have somebody working in my plant without me being there?
Well, I think that
seems
is-
like it's cruising for a bruising. I can't see how it's going to work.
And I think that's going to be for the applicant to decide.
Do you understand those restrictions?
I do understand it, and, I understand that, there's parking requirements for the space, but I don't think that should be an issue, especially when it comes to subcontractors, because every business along that street, especially body shops, use subcontractors. There's no one shop on this street or in the town of Los Gatos that does everything in-house.
They may, sir, but they may not be liable by have CUP that says one employee. So I guess if a subcontractor shows up, you have to leave. I think we should do something more sensible than this and set them up for that.
So I'm going to ask, rather than derail this, that we go ahead and let the other commissioners ask some questions. We do have comment cards from the public, and I'd like to table this to revisit it when the applicant comes back. Commissioner Hansen had a question, then Commissioner O'Donnell.
My question, I had the same question about the employees, but I think Commissioner Kane kind of went to the places I would have gone with the questioning. But I'm going back to the customer parking. Can you tell me what's typical for a turnaround time for one customer? You have a car that's being worked on in the working bay. What is the turnaround time?
Every job varies.
Like if you had to make an average, or is there a range? Is it like a half a day to 2 days, or
It could average from overnight to, upwards of months. every vehicle accident is different. No two are the same.
Okay, so getting back to the fact that you have a one working bay and 3 customer parking spaces, and your conditions of approval say that the 3 customer parking spaces shall be accessible at all times. So that means that you can't have anything parked in any of those parking spaces.
But customer vehicles. So as I'm working on one car and I would pull that out as I'm, either in between jobs or, finish with the job, put it in the customer space, bring out the other one and move it into the work bay.
Well, your conditions of approval don't say that. It says they have to be accessible at all times. So maybe there's just a nuance in the conditions of approval. Because I understand what you're saying. That makes sense. That seems like the right way to do it, but that's not what this says here. It says they have to be accessible at all times. That means there shouldn't be anything parked there for anything other than a very short amount of time. And what I'm hearing is you're going to
for customer vehicles.
You're going to
From my understanding, it's for customer vehicles, and that's what it would be. It's not for my own personal parking or my friend's parking or anything else. It would be for customer vehicles.
Fair enough. Okay, getting back to what you just said, though, supposing you have the really tough car that takes months, so basically you're going to be having just that one car there, and then nothing other than people visiting for the next, because it's going to take months, right? So that those customer parking spaces will be thing. But if you have something that's overnight, you might have somebody that came in a few days before and drops it off, and they might be in the spot. I mean, so I'm just envisioning a scenario where you could end up having all those 3 customer parking spaces be filled up pretty often.
I don't see it that way. As long as you schedule everything correctly, then I don't see that being an issue. I think if I go and I was a high volume shop that just took on everything that was thrown at them, then I'd run into a lot of problems. That parking wouldn't be suffice. The building size wouldn't be suffice. But I'm just starting back out after being away from it after 3 years. It's not like I'm going to get a wave of business right off the bat.
Okay, fair enough. And then just to confirm, the space that you have set up in the shop is big enough for any car that's parked anywhere to be turned around so that when they come out of the building, they'd be going forward, not backward. Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that. Okay, all right.
Commissioner O'Donnell, and then I'm going to move to the public.
It's been my observation that sometimes in your business, a tow truck arrives towing a car. Does that happen?
Yes.
Now, if you have another vehicle in the one spot you've got for a work vehicle, do you tell the tow driver to go away?
He would have to take it back to their facilities.
So long as you have one person in the work space, you cannot take another car to work on, right?
No, I could because
Not if you read the permit, you couldn't, right?
Well,
Did you read the permit?
From my understanding, the 3 spaces are customer vehicle parking. That means customers that vehicles that I'm working on.
If I have a car that needs to be repaired, you consider that parking. So if I have 4 cars in your shop, 1 is under repair right now, 3 are waiting to be repaired, there is no customer parking, but you consider.
Well, they would be customers, so from my understanding, that would be customer parking.
Okay.
I'm not, a business, like a bar or restaurant that has customers just coming in, sitting down, having a cup of coffee, something to eat, and leaving.
Well, I understand your understanding, but let me ask you, if in fact you're wrong, and you have to have 3 parking spaces, which means people can come in and park in that spot and go back out, as opposed to you using it to repair vehicles. If you assume for the moment that's what the permit says, could you conduct your business? In other words, you only have 1 car at any given time that can be repaired. For example, if you take months to repair a car and you've only got room for 1 car to be repaired, you think that makes any sense?
No, it doesn't. But at that time, that's the time, if that's the way the permit reads, I would have to make adjustments to not schedule any vehicle that's going to take longer than, say, 2 or 3 days or a week. Anything longer than that, I wouldn't take the vehicle in. I would just send it out.
So when somebody comes in and you think it's going to take 2 or 3 days, and somebody else calls you on day 2 and says, I've got to tow my car in, you tell them to go elsewhere. Is that right?
I would tell them they would either have to wait, or I could refer them to another shop, or they could take it to a shop that they choose of their choosing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We're going to now invite some of the public to speak, and then when we are finished, you will have an additional 3 minutes to come back up, address us with any of the items that was brought up by the public, I think we may have some additional questions. And then at that time, I would like us to engage staff a little bit more in going through a couple of the conditional use permit items to make sure that we are clear and the applicant is very clear. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to call Mark Mander. Mark, you'll have 3 minutes. And just like previously, when the yellow light comes on, you have 30 seconds. When the red light comes on, your time is up. Please state your name.
My name is Mark Mander. Good evening, Commissioners. I live at 634 Industrial Way. The property is known as 635 University Avenue. My family has owned the property since the early 50s. We have 3 storefront tenants on University Avenue. I usually don't get involved with neighbors' decisions on who they rent to. However, I cannot agree with the proposed use for this address. It is unfortunate that Mr. Rodis's property is located where it is in relationship to the Blossom Hill Road and University intersection. I am against this. My main reason is parking. Since the Ballet Pilates studio moved in across from us, parking has been more of a challenge for our tenants and their customers. Other business owners on the street that I have spoke with agree as well. It is already maxed out for the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. The Ballet Pilates owner assured me when they went in that the parents would only be dropping off and picking up at curbside, but that has not been the case. Pilates customers park on University all the time and in front of our property. Industrial Way as well, which our property borders, is maxed out as well. It's absolutely nuts. The CB Concrete Army takes most of the spots early on, and their vehicles stay there until 4:30 or 5, Monday through Friday. The 3 body shops on the street fill the rest. Yes, there's 3, and 4 with one on the other side that I'm aware of. And put their customer vehicles on top of that. The DMV customers troll for what is left, and that completes it. Mr. Nishida states in his letter of justification that he will perform work with highly trained technicians, plural. I thought there was only 1. He states the following: there are not many repair facilities in the town. I count 4. Also, that the proposed use would not be detrimental to public health or safety. I disagree. Tow truck drop-offs, customer pull-ins and outs of the driveway, deliveries in and out of the driveway, all on that intersection, really? If additional parking is required, he also states if additional parking is required, there is an abundance, really, of street parking approximately 25 feet away on University. That's because all of the parking in front of his property is red. I have a feeling that your staff is out of touch with what is our reality down there. Perhaps you could require, well, I'll finish. I'm sorry to Mr. Rodis and to Mr. Nishida, but I encourage you to deny this use permit.
All right. Commissioner Talasford, then Commissioner Kane.
I do have a question for you. You live on Industrial Way. There is a map. I don't know if you can see it.
In the middle
but
of
I'm
the,
just
I'm in the
wondering,
middle of the block.
in the middle of the block?
Yeah.
On the back side? On both sides?
Our mailing address is on Industrial.
It's on Industrial,
Yeah.
okay. So you're in the middle of the
Yeah.
block
We
there?
have a second floor apartment on the property,
Okay,
and we have 3 storefront retail units that are on University.
okay,
My brother owns one of those businesses, and he uses the back construction yard for his access on Industrial.
okay. All right, fine. So you're in the middle. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
You said the parking in front of the subject property was red, and we've all been to the site, but that's what I've been trying to say. There is no parking.
Exactly.
When you leave the curb, you're in University traffic. I live over there, and I know what's going on with the
It's
children.
unfortunate. I mean, I don't wish to, curtail the man's ability to rent his property, but
So my
it just
point was
seems I just don't
it's
see
the
this.
curb that's painted red because there's no way to park.
Oh, you
That-
couldn't
that
park
is
there
the
anyway.
street.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Dennis Gilman?
Hi, my name's Dennis Gilman. I am a general manager at South Bay Auto Body. And a lot of what has been said here is kind of confusing for me, too. I've been in the business since 1976, and I can find it virtually impossible for one person to maintain a business of this caliber, not to mention the safety equipment that needs to be put in there as for storage of hazardous waste and the spraying of the vehicles. A portable spray booth, we'd all put them in if they were legal. I think that is something that needs to be seriously looked at before a conditional permit would be out there, because that is a primary area. So is that spray booth going to take up that work stall while the paint is drying? Or is he not going to do any more work? It just continues. Like you said, question after question keeps coming up. I'm looking out for our business. We provide customer parking on site. We don't bring customers into our building to have them turn around to drive back out of it. I'd like to know the dimensions of the building, because I can't imagine somebody in a 3,000 square foot building turning around their Chevy truck or work truck or a tow truck in there or something, trying to turn around to come back out of there. That doesn't sound reasonable. And it is a very high traffic volume area there. And it's a lot of customers will come in and want estimates. A lot of them just stop by. Oh, body shop, I'm going to get an estimate. Oh, I'm going to get an estimate. They'll be in, we'll have 4 or 5 people coming in one at the same time for an estimate. So, it's nice to try to schedule it, but in the perfect world, it doesn't happen.
All right, do we have any questions? Commissioner King?
Are estimates a big part of the business?
Estimates are the majority of the business. That's where you're communicating with the customer. And it's not just so much the estimate. You're writing the estimate. Sometimes it requires a tear down of the vehicle to be able to get in there to find all the damages. So you have to invite them back by the state laws to have them sign documents. So
That's for the insurance companies.
That's going through an
That's
insurance
the
company,
business.
customer pay, whether it's, either or of them. They got, generally, they're back in there 2 to 3 times, signing documents, walking them through the repair process.
Thank you.
I have a question. I want you to walk us through what a portable spray booth is.
I do not know what a portable spray booth is. I've been in the industry, like I said, since 1976. I've yet to see a portable spray booth in use.
Okay.
I've seen some, what we call dust collectors. So when you're prepping something, it'll collect the dust. But when somebody is spraying a car, they need to be wearing a respirator, fresh air system, inside a contained, what we call a downdraft booth, which is zero gravity, so that all the fumes are being captured into the proper filtration system.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Hanson?
Just so we have some comparison, you mentioned about having parking for your customers, and how, roughly how many employees do you have and how much parking do you have?
We have, currently we have 7 employees working on the vehicles. We have 3 people working in the office. So total of 10. And we're considered a small volume, but we have quite a bit of space for parking.
And how many parking spaces do you have for customers and
We
versus
have,
employees?
we've got about 18 parking spots. That's on the outside of the building.
It's on the outside.
Yeah, that's not including any of the workspaces inside. I'm just giving what's on the outside.
It's on the outside, and then you have parking inside as well.
Right. You could put 3 parkings right in our front driveway away from the curb that they could come in and talk.
Because of the setback that you
Yes.
have. Okay.
Commissioner Badami?
And what is the square footage of your building?
I don't have the exact square footage. I
But
wasn't
so-
prepared for that question, but
Well,
probably around 4,000 square feet.
Okay, so,
It's
Mr.
two,
Nish-
we're in 2 separate buildings, so we're kind of spread out a little bit.
okay, so the 2 separate buildings combined are about 4,000, because Mr. Nishida's application, it's about 3,000 square feet for 1 employee.
I can ask, what's it? We got a total of 9,000 square feet.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions? No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, next is Jim Jim? You can pronounce your last name for me so I don't say it wrong. Malamentanius. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jim Malamentanius, and I'm really just here for nothing against Ed or anything that's going on. I've been doing this since 1977. We took over in 1990 where we're at in Los Gatos. I own several buildings on the street there, and my big thing was I was told there was no more conditional use permits allowed for spray booths when you guys made me revoke the one that I had at 601 University. So that was my big problem when I heard there was another booth coming in or another body shop. My other big concern is that in this same building, there's another supposedly satellite body shop that they take all of the Los Gatos customers to San Jose, which they're billing them out there. This is a new thing that's going on in the industry. They have one building, one shop somewhere, and they're finding all these small little holes to fill in to gather customers, take them elsewhere to fix the cars, what really goes on. So those tax dollars are going to Cupertino, they're going to San Jose, they're going wherever they're going. They're not staying here. That's a big problem for me. So that and the fact that I lost my conditional use permit for ever putting a spray booth in a building that I own was my big reason to come here, to hear what was going on.
All right. Commissioner Talsworth and Commissioner Kane.
When was it that you lost the spray booth permit, I guess?
Yeah, so on my property on 601 University, I had a conditional use permit to put a spray booth in there because our body shop used to be in there as well, and painting. And for us, when I purchased 617 and 615 University, for me to have my body shop over there, they no longer would let me have it at 601.
Okay, but you have it at the other two
Yeah,
buildings, okay.
right. So my problem is for me to be able to do any more paint work in there, I'm not allowed to anymore. So that was when I just heard this whole thing was going. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't know why, unless you can give it back to me.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kane.
Why are you not allowed to spray paint over there anymore?
Because they took the conditional use permit away from me.
Do you know why they did that?
For me to be able to do it down here, they took it away from me from being over here.
They're saying you could only have one or two?
Yeah,
So you want
is what I'm assuming. All I know is when I bought 615 and 617 to keep a conditional use permit to painting here, I had to leave it here. I have it on 615, 617, and 627. So that's what.
Can staff help with this?
Staff doesn't know the particulars of this, but if you move locations, your CUP, if it's not vested, no longer is active, so he probably had to get an additional CUP. I'm not sure what year even we're talking about. I have never heard of any prohibition of additional spray booths from the town's perspective,
Well,
whether
he's been on
Bay
that
Air
street a lot.
Quality or some other government agency has restrictions. We're not aware of any. The town definitely doesn't have any.
Thank you.
Looks like something you may want to look into with staff. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay.
And last, Gary Fowler.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Gary Fowler. I own Preferred Image Body Shop. Super good friends of Ed Rodas, who actually owns the building. I have nothing against Mr. Rodas and all the years of him renting this building, but I'm in contingency about the new body shop that's proposed in this town. As a body shop owner, I've been in the business since 77, 76. I'm 40 years strong in the business. I personally work in my business. I wash cars. I write estimates, probably 10 a day on an average. Answering phones, crunching files, doing framework, doing body work, doing primering, doing buffing, putting a car together. It is virtually impossible for me to be able to do everything in my business, as I am popular, talkative, selling jobs. Also, too, my friends don't call me to come in to visit me when they got in a car crash. Car crash is an accident. people sometimes are stressed and stuff. They come to me right then and there, looking for my help. Having the street and the town actually change the characteristic of the parking and the signs and everything they put out there, the street lights and everything, they actually widened the street there, which made it very difficult for Mr. Ed Rodis's building on the side there. They actually painted the whole curb red. So cars coming up Blossom Hill, making a right-hand turn onto University, if a car's backing out right there, it's an incident. I've seen so many accidents on this corner. There's marks on Mr. Rodis's building and my building from where cars actually hit our building there over the years. Cars coming around, it's dangerous for tow trucks to go in, try to make a wide turn, blocking 2 lanes of traffic just to get inside that building. It can be very difficult for tow trucks. Conditional use permit. It's understood that we all body shops know that a new spray booth is not allowed. What I showed you guys there is a typical spray booth. Every body shop around has a spray booth. A car has to be in an enclosed area with the fire department regulations that you have to have fire extinguishers, proper connected lights where there's no electricity inside of it, air ventilation has to be done on it. The second picture I printed up really fast is it's kind of like a prep station. It's a little portable, little ventilation area. So you put it by the car where you're trying to do a little paint work, and it takes the air from inside the body shop. So yeah, he's gonna take cellophane and cover cars in his notes to keep cars from getting overspray on them. So where's all the other fumes going in? Into the body shop. The customers in my shop are not allowed in my body shop, from the grinding, the sparks. A frame machine, is there a frame machine on that plan? I'm not sure. Is there a spray booth area on that plan? Is there a paint bench? Is there a paint supply stuff? It's a lot. There's 7 auto body shops in this town. It's pretty impressive. Me, yes, I am on the corner. Do I really want a body shop on the corner of my town? 27 years here. Probably not. But I decorated my building. I try to make my building nice. I try to keep my parking neat. But 7 body shops, another one, parking, people, the little kids that come from the school.
All right, Mr.
Pretty tough.
I have to interrupt you.
Of course.
Do we have any questions? Commissioner Kane?
When you say you don't allow people to pull into your body shop and drive their cars back out, why is that? Is there a legal restriction against that, or is it just your policy?
It is a strict, it's a strict rule with my insurance company that no customers are allowed in the body shop area. My employees wear glasses, there's grinding, a customer could get hurt. So customers are not allowed inside the body shop.
How many employees do you have?
I run 5 employees.
How many bays?
Oh, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We run about 10 bays.
And the access egress to your establishment is on industrial?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we have about 3 car parking right out front. Keep it open for customers that constantly come in for incidences.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
That's it? Okay, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we'll now call back up the applicant. You have 3 minutes to discuss anything that you just heard, answer any questions, and then we will probably have some continued questions for you.
Okay, let's see. First off, the gentleman from South Bay Auto Body, you had mentioned that, every shop has a downdraft spray booth. That is untrue. 60% of the shops in the Bay Area have older spray booths that are not downdraft spray booths. That's something that every body shop shoots for because that's, supposedly the best type of spray booth to use in order to capture more particles and dust. But that's not true that that's what is used or even required. The majority of the shops in the Bay Area have cross flows or side downdrafts, or they don't even have that. What they have are front, flow booths. So that's number one. 2, South Bay, when you're comparing apples to oranges on the size of the space, theirs is 3 times the size of my space that I'm proposing to put a body shop in. Second of all, they're a direct repair facility for 2 major insurance companies, which means that insurance companies send him work constantly on the daily. Now, yeah, he has adequate parking up front, but it doesn't, he does use the front parking, in the street also, because I've seen cars there when I've walked by. Cars have been wrecked and set there over the weekend, were waiting for him to be open. So, everybody on that block uses the street for parking in one way or another, whether it's to just come open up their facility or to come in to work or something. I wouldn't, it's unfair for, you know, these gentlemen to say that, oh, well, you're going to be taking up all the parking. It's a big issue. Yeah, parking is an issue, but all the other neighbors and tenants around there, everybody works together. And I could go there any time of the day, with the exceptions on weekends, and find parking on the street. The weekends, that's another story. With Vasona Park nowadays so popular, it gets extremely busy, and I could never find parking. As far as the gentleman that had his spray booth permit revoked, you know, I sympathize with him. I would be pretty upset too if that happened to me. Seeing as that I'm in the business myself. I mean, to have that and then you buy buildings and it get revoked. I don't know the circumstances on that, so I really can't go into detail and comment on that. But I mean, there's nothing in the town code that says there are no more spray booths to be allowed in the town of Los Gatos. I know, you know, there is, you know, memorandums where it has to be in a certain area, a certain zoning, which from my understanding, I'm in that proper zoning. As far as Gary Fowler, a preferred image, I mean, for him to say, he just said that he works on 10 cars daily on the average. Well, I mean, that would be a violation of a CUP because his only allows for 6 working bays and 3 employees. So that would make me question, how is he to come in here and talk about denying my permit when he's in violation of his own? I think that's totally unfair. And if you look on University Avenue any day of the week and you go on University Avenue when he's open, he has cars spread out all throughout University Avenue on the street. There is no outside parking according to his CUP. So again, that's, you know, another issue. Third.
Actually, I have to stop you. Your time is up. Do we have any questions? Okay, I'm going to go Commissioner Talasfor, Commissioner O'Donnell, and Commissioner King. Okay.
So, I'm sorry? Okay. So to the point of your letter of explanation that you've included in the staff report, and as it was pointed out, you have said here, if additional customer parking is needed, there is an abundance of street parking approximately 25 feet away on University Avenue. And you heard tonight, and I could probably, as most of us could, attest to the fact that there's little parking most of the days on University Avenue. So how would you, can you tell me how you would justify this?
I justify it because I'm there every day. You know, even because I'm not open doesn't mean I'm not down at the facility working on the computer or my laptop. You know, like I said, I could go there any time of the day and find parking. The only time I can is on weekends when it is, you know, taken because of Vasona Park.
But your business, your conditions of approval are saying that you need to be parking on site.
Right, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be parking vehicles on the street.
It's hard for me to approve something when I'm hearing you tell me that you're going to park on the street.
No, that was just an explanation if additional parking is needed. I'm not saying that I'm going to go use it, but like I said, any body shop CUP on there probably has provisions where, you know, they're supposed to park on site, but yet everybody on that block, you know, from body shops to other businesses, whether they're supposed to be parking on site or not, they park on the street.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell and then Commissioner King.
I just have a factual question. I've heard discussions tonight about the paint booths, and Mr. Fowler gave us a photograph of one.
Right.
You've indicated, I think, that you would have a different one?
Correct, and I have images that I'd like to show you guys.
Okay.
That is what a mobile spray booth looks like. The reason why a lot of people haven't seen them is because this is a new product that came out probably approximately 5 years ago. So it's not something that's normally used in a heavy, you know, spraying environment. But on a limited basis, like myself and, you know, under the space constraints, this is the perfect solution for that. I'm not looking to spray 10 cars a day like Gary Fowler does. I mean, that would be a violation of any CUP requirement. Plus, I couldn't handle it. 10 cars a day just wouldn't.
Mr. Fowler did attach a copy of a drawing very similar and said to us, and I'm just asking you, said to us that's used for smaller jobs.
No, you could spray a whole vehicle in that. Not only that, but if you look at it, so the bottom part of the image are filters. Where
Can I ask you if you're going to take the microphone with you so we can hear you?
So the bottom part of the image is the filters where air is sucked in, similar to a side downdraft booth. And what it does is it filters all the overspray, any chemicals, up to 98% capture rate, and it exhumes fresh air from the top portion to filters.
So the Air Quality Management District would permit this then the same as they would with the bigger booths, and you're saying they don't care which you use?
Correct. Not only that, but it has a dry chem system, which there's two requirements for spray booths. It's either a sprinkler system, depending on the size of the building, or a dry chemical system. This has a dry chemical system built in, along with gauges and a fire extinguisher attached to it, as you could see in the image. So there's the fire extinguisher for the dry chem system, and there's gauges that are attached to this booth. And if it senses there's, a issue where there's going to be a fire, some type of thing where it needs to activate, it automatically activates. On top of that, as you can see, there's a fire retardant curtain that's see-through, so you could see the employee through there or whoever's spraying. And that's another safety issue because on a regular spray booth, there are no windows or, there's just metal doors. So you can't see what's going on in there.
How do you close the end of it? I see the sides and I see the front.
So there's a railing system on here.
Uh-huh.
And what it does is if you've ever been in a hospital, how they have the curtains that rail around the beds, that's what it does.
So it closes with the rail?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
Just want to express my concern, Mr. Nishida. When I visited you're in that building now.
Correct.
There's a for lease sign out front.
That's in front. That's the landlord. He put that up there.
Okay.
That was just as
I didn't know
make
you
him
were.
feel better, because he doesn't know how this is going to go, whether I'm going to be approved for a CUP or not, because I've had a few hiccups along the way. So.
But you're paying the rent, you're making the investment, and hoping for a good outcome.
Correct.
I want to share you with my concern on that pulling in and out issue. I couldn't find a parking spot, and I live not too far away, and I see the children coming from the park, coming from the dance school, cars lined up. So I pulled into the salon, which is the establishment next to yours, and went inside and asked, because it's a one lane and there were two cars in it, cyclone fence. I went and asked permission if I could just be there for 2 minutes. And then I did the on-site, and getting out of there was a devil. I couldn't see the street until I was flush with it. And as far as having mirrors, all the mirrors would have shown me is the cars. Because I waited a good 3 minutes for both sides to clear out so that I could safely back out and then head north on University. A thing to think about if we go forward with this is, as we've done in other establishments, to consider no left-hand turn. Just a thought.
Right, and that's not a problem for me. But one of the things that you had stated is that you were backing out, as opposed to the way I'm going to have vehicles pull out. They're going to be pulling forward, and depending on how you angle the mirrors and the size of the mirrors, you would get a full vision of not only the sidewalk where you're going to be pulling out in front of, but also the street. So you're going to be able to see pedestrians coming from left or right, and also vehicles from the street left and right.
Good. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Talsfor?
Just have a follow-up to that about the mirrors. Where would those be installed?
They would
On the
be
building?
on the top left and right-hand sides.
Is that on the outside of the building or on the inside?
I would have to look to see what's the best way. It could be either or, but I would want to do it at a way to get the best angle and best view.
And so we don't know what that is at this point?
No, either view could work.
Thank you.
All right, I have a couple questions. I want to talk about this paint booth, because what I want to talk about is there's this requirement that the roll-up door is open, and I want to clearly understand how the fumes and are exhausted with this type of a unit, does it attach to ducting to the roof? Because if it's self-contained, I'd like to know the percentage that it cleans the air, because what I'm understanding is this is going to be blowing out a front door to a sidewalk. So I'm not in your industry, so I would like to understand this very clearly.
So down below here, that's where the air is intake. That's where everything's sucked into, from paint fumes, clear coat, primers, whatever fumes of the vehicle that are coming from the vehicle being worked on gets sucked into here. And it go out through here after it's all filtered. And it's all enclosed. There's a 98% capture rate, and I have the documentation here because it's been tested. It's EPA 6H compliant. So in actuality, it captures, probably more fumes than the average spray booth that's installed in the Bay Area.
Okay. So then my next question on this was you made a comment about the fire suppression system.
Correct.
However, a fire extinguisher and a fire suppression system are two different things.
Well, so there's both. There's a fire extinguisher attached and a dry chemical system.
And does the dry chem system come out from the top to go down, or does it spray out? Because I don't see where there would be any way to dispense that.
So from my understanding, it comes from up here. It won't show it in the image because this is when the thing was first manufactured out. But it would be attached up here, so that way whenever there's some type of emergency, it would come down.
Okay. So it's my understanding with this type of industry that beyond us, you have state safety requirements that you have to meet.
Correct.
For our own benefit, I'd like you to briefly walk us through what those requirements are.
Okay. One of them is with the fire department. There needs to be a small business plan stating where chemicals are going to be kept, how they're going to be stored, how they're going to be disposed of. There needs to be certain labeling on them. Cal OSHA is another one that every business has to be in compliance with, from safety exit signs to fire extinguishers throughout the building. The other one is hazardous waste with Santa Clara County. There's a permit for oil waste and I believe coolant oil and transmission waste. It's similar to what the fire department would want as far as where you're storing the chemicals, how you're disposing of them, how they're labeled. And the last one would be the Air Board Quality Management Control that actually permits the spray booth in order to spray in the facility. They want to know what are going to be your most commonly used chemicals and what percentage of you're going to be using of that chemical.
So then I have a question to staff for that. So I apologize. I realize I'm asking a lot of questions. Do they have to have all of that in hand before we grant them their CUP or their permit for the space?
They do not. So they're required by law to do that. So they will have to do that to be in compliance with those various agencies. And so we'd request proof of that, but that would be following the CUP decision.
So if we were to grant a CUP for this use, obviously for him to go into business, there's going to be inspectors and everything, but do we do anything follow up? We give him the CUP, he goes in, he applies for this, and for some reason he doesn't get them. How as a town do we regulate that he received each one of those agencies' permits for the use?
So if you want to explicitly add that, that could be a condition of approval that adds that prior to operation, the required local and state agencies have signed off on the operation.
Okay. And then I have one other question, if you guys don't mind, because something you said brought up a question that maybe you, maybe part staff, all knowing how busy that corner is, has the fire department reviewed this? What would we do on that corner in a situation of a fire because of the traffic situation there?
Ms. Puga can answer that.
The Santa Clara Fire Representative Doug Harding did review the application. I don't believe he looked at it from a safety perspective. He was more looking at the interior space of where hazardous materials were going to be stored, and then referring Mr. Nishida to the hazmat division regarding the spray booth.
But there was no comment about what a fire truck would do in the situation of a fire in that space?
There was not.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any, Commissioner Kane?
In responding to the commissioner's question about emissions, you said it was my understanding that such and such took place. Have you operated one of these before?
I have not.
Is it a one-person job?
To operate, yes. It's not, very complicated. There's one switch for off and on to start the machine and shut it off.
Okay, so you haven't used one of these before.
I've seen it in use at a trade show.
I'm saying again, if you need help with it, you can't have it, as the way this thing is written. And your letter says highly skilled technicians, plural. And I think there is a disconnect between what is written here and what you think maybe can take place. Some of that has to be worked out.
Right, and I understand that. And when I said that, I'm talking more along the line of myself, because I am a technician from
Then that
being in
would
the
be,
business.
then that would be technician.
Okay, I actually, unless we have some other questions, I'm not going to close the public portion because I think you need to be part of this conversation. But I do think this is some dialogue we need to have with staff, because
Okay.
I also think on the applicant side, as we set up a CUP with wording, we certainly never want to set someone up to fail. And if the situation is, we would hope that you are very busy and profitable if this works out. And he needs someone to handle insurance. The last thing that we want to do is set this up where he's completely unable to do that. So I think if the understanding with staff is the one employee is one person, not you plus somebody else, I think that's some conversation we need to have. And how would that work with parking? How do we make changes to this that make this work?
So it is one employee, and that would be the applicant, Mr. Nishida. If he feels he's going to need additional subcontractors on site, additional technicians on site, whether that's one or two, then the CUP would have to be modified. So we would have to work with him to A, provide additional on-site parking for that option, and then revise the floor plan and make those modifications. So that's something that we would have to work with Mr. Nishida on, and then bring something back for the commission's consideration.
And I think the second item on the CUP that one of my fellow commissioners brought up is this idea of what customer parking is. Is customer parking somebody coming in, getting an estimate, and then leaving? Or is customer parking somebody has come to you, said, I want you to do this work, and their car's going to sit there for 3 days? So I think we need to understand staff's interpretation of that versus what you may be thinking.
So the customer parking, the intent was not to limit him to only one vehicle being worked on at one time. If the commission would like to change that condition, the language of that to read differently, they may choose to do so, but that was not the intent of the condition.
And I would also offer that the way the conditions worded, it says that they need to be kept free at all times. So we wouldn't anticipate storage of vehicles for long periods of time in those spaces, so that customers could come in and out should someone drop in.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I really am confused by both answers. My understanding is that the free parking spots are 3 parking spots. They are not additional storage spots, so that if you have more than one car at a time to repair, which is what this permit says you can have, his understanding, which would be reasonable if other language had been used, would be that you can use one or more of those 3 spaces to put a car that you're working on in that space, which means then you'd have 2 or 1 or no customer parking spots. Now, is it clear, in your mind at least, that the intention of the permit is that those 3 spaces are not used for the storage of automobiles that are being worked on?
So the way the condition's written, and I'll just read it, there shall be no double parking of vehicles. 3 customer spaces shall be accessible at all times per plans dated April 8th, 2015.
I still don't know what that means. 3 customer spaces. If I bring my car in and you're going to repair it, it sits there for a week. 1, I'm a customer. 2, I've got my car parked there. 3, you're working on it. The next guy comes in and wants to get some work. He can't park there. So when we say customer parking spaces, I take a parking space to be different than a storage space. And I don't know what your answer is.
And so we can add clarification to not allow storage of vehicles in those spaces.
Forget that for the moment. What is your understanding of what was your intent here?
The intent, Commissioner, is to make sure we meet the code's parking requirements. So a customer can park there and then leave. So if the car is there, there's a quick estimate, the car leaves, another customer can come in. It is not intended for any vehicle storage at
Okay,
all.
that's what I thought it
It's to
meant.
comply with parking requirements in the code.
Fine, thank you.
Commissioner Badami?
So would a delivery vehicle be considered a customer for a customer parking? If a delivery vehicle is coming and can park in the designated spots, they offload their stuff and they leave. I don't know, obviously, given the size of the parking spaces, that's going to constrain the size of the delivery trucks. There would not be allowance for outside deliveries in a red parking zone. They would not be allowed to double park either inside the structure or on the street.
Thank you, Ms. Parvetti.
Commissioner Telesfor?
Sorry. I wanted to clarify the accessibility for condition 7, which is the front coiling door along University shall remain open during the approved business hours. Remind me exactly why that door has to remain open.
So that is the way vehicles will access the space. Otherwise, with that door closed, a vehicle wouldn't be able to enter the space. The cooling door is how that happens.
Okay. So I thought it was also for ventilation. Wasn't it for also ventilation? Did I not read that in here?
It may also be applied towards the ventilation for the spray booth.
Thank you.
Commissioner Erickson?
This is to the chair. Is it still okay to ask the applicant a question?
That's why I didn't close it. I think
Okay,
with some of
okay,
these
just-
CUP,
yeah.
I have a couple questions for him too, so that's why I haven't closed public
Okay,
portion.
so for the moment, and don't get too hung up on the numbers, so if in fact one wanted, so if I look at the present plan, there are 5 potential locations to work on a car, store a car, park how many of our employees there are, and let me come in, let you give me an estimate on my car, and then leave. So there's 5 potential places to accomplish all of those things. Okay, if in fact, I'm not presuming that I think this is the right approach, nor am I, and I wouldn't ever presume that anything I would suggest would be agreed to by any other commissioner. So, so if in fact a condition were imposed that would restrict the number of vehicles that could either be worked on at a moment in time and or be stored there, and for the sake of argument for the moment, and I'm not suggesting that this would be the case, if that were 2, for the sake of argument, is that that kind of condition, does that work for you? Does that shut your business down? It can't be 5. We know it can't be 5. It could be no more than 4. You've got to have at least one bay work bay. You've got to have at least one, I might argue, you need to have at least one place for me to come in to let you give me an estimate. So at some point it may be, so you understand what I'm getting at. I'm trying to help solve the problem which people are having, but also find out from you. I mean, I don't know your business, and if I don't know, I mean, you tell me what sorts of conditions on the type of uses of those 5 spaces could be imposed that would still make it a doable, feasible business for your perspective. Can you help at least me understand that?
I think the conditions that are set forth now, the recommendations are fine. I would like, of course, them, if to be modified in some way if possible, but if not, it would work for me. Of course, I would always want to be able to use any of those spaces as parking for whether it be a customer vehicle, delivery vehicle, my own vehicle, whatnot. I mean, because the repair bay is not always used. If I have no customers and I just want to park my own car there, I'd like the option to do that without violating the CUP conditions and have somebody come and report me. The same goes for, friends stopping by, as opposed to them parking on the street, taking up parking. Let them come in and park in, the work bay or customer parking. I mean, even though I'm not working on their vehicle.
So I have a follow-up question to that. If my interpretation of the present language, because you said you're comfortable with the present language. Okay, let's assume that my interpretation of the present language is this. One parking spot for one of the 5 locations that we're talking about for employees. One for working on a vehicle, whatever, whether it's a portable bay or a different kind of bay, that's something for someone who knows more about the business to me. And 3 customer parking places which cannot be used for the storage of any vehicle overnight. Does that, if that's the interpretation that one were to put on this language, does that work for you as a business?
I think with the exception of the vehicle, a customer vehicle not being able to be stored overnight. That's with any business.
So it doesn't then? That interpretation
that
doesn't
part of
work
it
for
wouldn't
you?
work for me.
Okay, so how many spaces do you need to have? That's what I was trying to get you to help us answer. So the answer is not 0. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it?
Well, from my interpretation is the customer parking is just that. It's customer parking. If it's a customer coming in, I'm working on their vehicle, I could put it back there when I'm done working on it, and it could be there overnight till they pick it up.
Can I interject here really quickly, if you don't mind? Can I ask staff to step in on this? Because it's my understanding that the interpretation of these parking spots, having one as storage, technically that it's not a parking spot. This may be a moot point to be discussing. Can you clarify that, please?
So the code requirement is 3 parking spaces. Currently, they have 4. 1, 2, yeah, they have 4, and then they have the working bay. So technically, they have 1 extra spot that could be used for vehicle storage.
You've required 1 employee spot, right?
One employee spot.
Which is not a customer, so the 4 spots are spoken for, right?
So the town code, as stated in the staff report, requires 2 parking spaces for each working bay, which they have 1. So that's the 2, and 1 space for each employee. So their total required is 3 spaces. They currently have 4 spaces outside the working bay. So one of those spaces could be used for storage overnight.
One of the 3 could be.
One of the 3, correct.
So can I ask my fellow commissioners a question? It sounds like there's a couple lines in the CUP requirements that may not work for this business plan. I would venture a guess that perhaps there's a further conversation that takes place between the applicant and staff, revises some of this wording, because I'm still very uncomfortable with the single employee. Also, I just see that, I want to explain why we're bringing this up. Getting a change to a CUP, you think this is hard? Getting a change to a CUP once it's established is incredibly difficult. We're, in a sense here, trying to help you, because I don't really want to see you back in a year saying this doesn't work. It'll be very difficult. So I would like to ask my fellow commissioners if you agree and that we continue it. Actually, Commissioner Hansen had her hand up first, then Erickson, and then O'Donnell.
Well, just to respond to your statement, I tend to agree. I think that some work needs to be done to make this, the reality of the CUP mesh with the reality of what he's thinking in terms of his business plan as we're hearing it. And there is another issue that I feel like I have to bring up that didn't really come up, and it when we were hearing the public testimony. I mean, I'm looking at this drawing, and this is like a lot of chemicals and paints and everything, and the customer parking is embedded into the back of the building. And I myself took my car to a body shop about within the last year to get the work done. I was not allowed to set foot anywhere inside the shop. I was allowed to go in the office where they had staff and they wrote the estimate, but I wasn't allowed anywhere near the paint or on the floor with stuff. I don't see how this can work and keep people safe from the chemicals. And if there's a way to do it, I'd want to see a lot more detail about it.
So I'm sympathetic to the chair's perspective with one exception. I don't think it's within the province of the commission to dictate to a business owner how many employees he or she has in their business. If they think they can run their business with one employee, or they need 10 employees, or they need 2 employees, that's really their business. Once they determine how many number of employees that they would need, the town then imposes its jurisdiction on that business to meet certain requirements that are dictated by the number of employees. But for the commission to suggest that we don't think he can run his business with only 1 employee seems like to me is beyond the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I don't believe that continuing this matter will help the matter. I think the property is too small. I think the plan, any way, shape, or form, doesn't work. I think the danger with the street access is you could put a horn like they do in some parking lots, but I don't know why. We're supposed to make the conditional use permit requirements. You're a lot different than simply issuing a permit. I couldn't make those requirements. There are 4 requirements. I couldn't make at least 3 of them. I'm not trying to put anybody out of business. On the other hand, you talk about how hard it would be to get a modified use permit. I will tell you that in this town at the moment, there are many use permits that are not being observed. And that's because we don't have enough enforcement staff. So I don't want to issue a permit because maybe someday he'll come in and say, well, I'm not doing what you told me. So what I've heard tonight is there's just, yes, there is a missed opportunity to understand what the other side is saying. But even if one understands it, I don't see how you run the business. The location isn't good. The size of the location isn't good. Access is terrible. The plan he submitted, I think it's correct when you say, what do you do about the chemicals? And we're not the ones that he said he should have 1 employee, I think. He said that. And then we said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, that's me. But then he said, well, I can have subcontractors come in. The whole thing has been, at a minimum, confusing. And I would say, fine, we could try to straighten out the confusion. But I don't see how anybody can believe that you could put this facility in this spot with its problems any way, shape, or form and approve it. So I would oppose a continuance. I'd rather have a straight up and down motion tonight.
Okay, then I'm going to pause this right now. I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing because now we're moving away from anything that has dialogue. So I'm going to thank you very much. So the public portion is closed. We've had some dialogue here. I would like to ask, based on what we just heard, would anyone like to venture a motion and then we can have some further discussion? Go for it, Tom.
I would move that we deny the conditional use permit application. The conditional use requires 4 findings, which are set forth in Exhibit 2. One is that the proposed use of the property is essential or desirable for the public convenience or welfare because the use would provide an auto repair and paint service. Well, obviously, simply providing an auto repair and paint service is not a public convenience if it's in the wrong location. And I believe that this is the wrong location and the wrong size and access, so I don't think we can satisfy 1. 2, the proposed use will not impair the integrity and character of the zone. I think it will cause a density of these facilities within essentially 1 block area, and I don't think that's consistent with the integrity and character of the zone. 3, the proposed use would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare. I think we talked over and over again about the difficulty of parking, access by tow trucks, and I would hazard the guess access by the fire department. So I don't think we can satisfy 3. And then it says the proposed use of the property is in harmony with the various elements or objectives of the general plan and the purpose of the town code. And I don't see how that could possibly be with the plan as it presently is stated. So that's the motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Do we have a second? Questions, comments, Commissioner Telesfor?
Yeah, I will second that. I don't want to repeat everything that's been said tonight. You did a great job. Thank you, everybody that talked. I had problems with all of it, just all of it. In general, but let me just highlight some of the things I made notes of. One, having, first of all, I believe we already have 7 auto body shops in that area. Adding another one, I don't know that we need it anymore. How is that desirable here? It would add much more intensity than we need to a storefront that is, I don't even know how you would make a right-hand turn into that driveway. You would have to make a wide, I mean, you'd have to get way over on the line to get into that door. I was bothered by the fact of mounting mirrors because we didn't know if they were going to be inside, outside. I don't think we want to put mirrors on the outside of that area. Looking, quite honestly, university is starting to spiff itself up a lot. And that particular building, I was surprised, looked as nice as it did. And actually, for me, I think there is a high probability that if it remains with the designation it has now, that it might attract perhaps another type of service. And I don't want to be putting in another CUP with an auto body when maybe we could have a, I don't know, a carpet store or a parts store or a painting service. I mean, there's lots of other types of businesses that I think would be appropriate there for all the reasons that were mentioned. And I had the problems with conditions 4, 7, and 8. Let's see what else. And yeah, and the garage door open all the time. What kind of an answer is that for, you know, for noise and also the visual image of it, as well as ventilation and safety for people on the sidewalk? And why? And we heard tonight, insurance companies don't let you walk into body shops, and we all know that. So that's why I'm seconding this motion.
All right, any other comments or take a vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Paulson, are there any appeal rights?
There are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
We're going to just take a 5-minute, very quick break before we start on the next, if that's okay. Yes.
Chair, before you do that,
Yes.
for an obvious reason,
yes,
I don't think I have to stay for the recess. I cannot sit in this matter because I live in the Forbes Mill condominiums, and that property, because you take the whole property, not just my unit, is within 500 feet of this project, and therefore by town law, I could not sit tonight. So I'm going to recuse myself, and I will leave. So, good night.
We hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll be back. Reopening the Planning Commission meeting. I want to thank you guys for your patience. We're now looking at item number 2, Architecture and Site Application S-12-02, requesting approval to construct a second-story addition above commercial space, Igati, for separate living quarters on property zone C2. Have all commissioners visited the site? Yes? And we already have the disclosure from Commissioner O'Donnell. Do we have any other disclosures for this item? No? All right, Ms. Mosley, I understand you're going to give us the report tonight.
I am, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. The applicant is proposing to construct a new second-story addition over an existing commercial space located at the northern terminus of College Avenue. The new second story would contain one single-family residential unit and is proposed to be occupied by the property owner, who is also the restaurant manager. However, it should be noted that town code would allow this unit to be occupied by somebody other that is not associated with the commercial use downstairs. The unit will be accessed through the existing driveway on the project site, and 2 new parking spaces will be provided at the rear of the existing building. A new staircase will be provided at the rear of the existing building to access the new unit from the exterior. No interior connection will be provided. Both staff and the property owner are aware that this site is difficult and will be difficult to do the construction on, but not any more so than any other downtown location. Construction in the downtown is difficult and does need to be managed and monitored appropriately. The applicant has provided a working construction management plan that will be further refined between the pending approval and any issuance of building permits. The construction management plan will include items such as scheduling of deliveries and a method and schedule for keeping adjacent property owners and tenants aware of construction activity and potential impacts. The applicant has provided a streetscape which shows how the proposed architecture and massing of the new addition is compatible with the surrounding structures and those in the immediate vicinity. The project was considered by the town's consulting architect, and while the architect did have a couple of recommendations which the applicant has included in their revisions, the consulting architect did find the scale and the proposed architecture to be compatible. The project provides one additional unit in the downtown and is supported by the town's general plan and town code. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the subject application, subject to the attached conditions. Staff is here if you have any additional questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Talasford, then Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you. There are a couple of things, and maybe it falls under this. What is the classification of this space? Is it residential? Is it commercial?
So the downstairs is commercial, the upstairs will be residential.
Residential. So as far as it's residential, how does FAR apply in this project, or does it?
The FAR is applied over the C2 zone as a 0.6, and the proposed addition will comply with that restriction.
Okay, and then another question is, and then I'll stop. So is there the owner of this new residence, would they also be able to sell or rent the residence separate from the restaurant?
Yes, that is what I was mentioning, is that currently the town code does not restrict that the unit be owner-occupied or be occupied by somebody associated with the commercial space downstairs. They are providing the required parking.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we have other questions, but I'll...
Okay. Commissioner Erickson.
So the consulting architect had 3 specific kinds of concerns, recommendations, and if I understand correctly, the first was to eliminate the wood shutters, and that will be done. The second was to provide a different kind of metal bracket on the front awning, and that's also going to be done. And then the third had to do with the brick veneer, and based on a site visit made with the design architect for the project and the staff, that everyone was, and the consulting architect, everyone was satisfied with the proposal now, which is to have just a brick veneer on the lower level and not recessed, and that it matched, and the rationale behind it is it matched the buildings, the treatment of other buildings in the general area. Is that correct? So.
That is correct. Particularly, the consulting architect was referring to the building on the right side of the alleyway adjacent to the subject site.
Right, so he was satisfied. I have a second question then. So can you help us understand, for sure, this is about parking. So to be sure that with the 2 parking spaces, where the 2, if I'm understanding correctly, I'm going to ask you a series of elements about this, and you can answer all of them at the same time. So there are currently no designated parking spaces to the rear of this property, so the whether or not people park there or not is not really material to this discussion, to the determination of the number of parking spaces. But they're going to add 2 parking spaces, which will then which will meet the requirement for that residential unit. And are there any implications for the parking assessment district as a result of adding this addition on?
So to start with, the 2 additional parking spaces will meet the requirements of town code for the new single-family residence upstairs. The parking required for the restaurant use downstairs is all provided for in the parking assessment district, and the new second unit, or I keep calling it second unit, the new upstairs unit will not impact the parking assessment district because those 2 spaces will be provided on site.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
A minor point. When you say new parking spaces, does it matter that it's currently being used as a parking space?
Short answer, no. They've never been recognized. So even if somebody is temporarily or somebody associated with the business is quasi using those spaces, they're offsetting what currently is provided in the parking assessment district technically, as far as what the property owner has paid into the assessment district for this use.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
I had a couple of questions. One was a little bit more clarification on the question that Commissioner Talas first asked about the ownership. So it's going to be one parcel that has a commercial use on the bottom and a residential use on the top. So if the property is sold, it'll be sold as one unit.
As one site, yes.
Okay, and the residential zoning doesn't have any implication whether it's rental or owned or anything?
There is no residential zoning on this site. It's all C2, which does allow a residence in conjunction with a permitted use within the C2 zone.
But there's no restriction or specification that it has to be owned or rented or anything like that. That's up to the owner of the property, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's mention of in the staff report and also in the architect's report of there was other mixed use in the vicinity, but there wasn't any detail about it. There's pictures of and I was just wondering if you could comment because there's right across East Main Street and then the one that's immediately to the east. They talked, what is the nature of that? I was trying to come up with comparable.
So those are operated in the same way. As far as I'm aware of, those are apartment units. They are not condos like the ones down above Lebu. So they would operate in a similar fashion.
Okay. So, and do you know how many units there are in the ones across the street?
I do not know. I don't have that information. I'm sorry.
But there's definitely other buildings in the vicinity that have the exact same use mix.
They have it. Yes, correct.
A restaurant on the bottom and whatnot. Okay, all right. And then on the construction management plan, or the COP in the exhibit, there was some letters in particular the one of the next door neighbor, the 23rd Main Street, of being unwilling to have their property used in any way relative to the construction. Just in terms of timing, the current exhibit 10, the COP page, and their plans reflects this after they got the letter from 23rd Main Street saying we aren't going to be part of this thing.
Correct. The current COP takes that into account.
Okay. And then my last question was, I had thought from my previous experience on transportation and parking that the parking assessment district had expired. Not that it makes a real material impact on this, but I thought it had expired at the end of last year.
Joel can fill in some of those details potentially.
Or maybe they decided to continue.
All
it.
my information is just from overhearing. I don't know specifics on that.
Yes, it has expired, but that doesn't mean that all the parking spaces that were granted into it, they're still granted into it. So there isn't any more money being accepted into the assessment district. But
Right.
those-
So my understanding is that property owners don't continue to pay into the
Correct.
assessment district.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they've already paid the full fees that they were supposed to pay for those spaces.
I have a quick question. Sorry, then, Commissioner. What year was this building built?
I don't have that specific number. Unfortunately, our records, county records, don't show any number. I've looked at our Sanborn maps, and they show that there was no structure there in the late 50s.
Okay.
Our building permit records do not indicate, do not give me any better information.
No, that answers my question. Okay, Commissioner Talsfor?
So just as another follow-up to my other questions about selling real estate, can this residence ever be turned into a commercial use?
It would not have sufficient parking for commercial use, no.
But it does for a residence?
Correct.
2 parking?
Correct.
And there's 3 bedrooms, and what do they do with the extra car? Okay.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Ms. Mosley.
Of course.
Now I'm going to open the public portion of the public hearing and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission. Bob Fleury? Mr. Fleury, you'll have 5 minutes to address the commission. When the light goes yellow, you have 30 seconds. When it's red, your time is up. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Bob Fleury. I'm with Fleury Bryant Design Group. We're the project designers, and I won't need the 5 minutes. I just want to let you know that I'm here. The owner of the property is here, Al Mansourian, his daughter Netta, and our general contractor is here, Mike Kandow. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer questions, but I don't plan to make any kind of presentation. Thank you.
Just to clarify, go ahead and stay on up.
Yep.
If we're going to ask questions and we have questions of the contractor, they can utilize this time right now?
Correct.
Or-
If you ask questions, the time stops. So
Okay. All right. Questions? Go. Commissioner Talsfor?
Okay, let me do a little housekeeping here. Sorry about that. Okay. I do have a question and it has to do with I wondered what other consideration did you give to the location of the 400 square foot terrace? Thank you.
Well, it was sort of a natural location to have it on the front of the building because we didn't want to get into remodeling the restaurant by putting a stairway and entrance to the apartment upstairs on the front of the building. So that meant that we had to enter the unit at the back of the building. So we get up to the top, we didn't want to have the terrace right there, so it made sense to have it out in the front, just from a space planning point of view.
It
Does
made
that-
sense to not walk through a terrace to a door?
No, it makes, well, at the back of the building.
Start up again.
Well, at the back of the building, which is the logical place to enter the unit upstairs, because to do so on the front of the building, we would have had to remodel the restaurant, redo the storefront to make space for an entry with stairs going upstairs, right? Understand that part?
No? No, not at all. I don't understand that.
Okay, so if you have we have
How
a
are you-
building,
how are you-
building, it has a storefront on it, right?
Why don't we refer to the plan?
Okay. Okay.
So what page should I refer
Why don't you
to?
go to sheet 5, which is the lower level floor plan. It's the floor plan of the restaurant.
Okay,
Okay. So with the unit upstairs from the restaurant, if we tried to enter that unit from the front of the building, from the Main Street side, we would have to modify the storefront.
Where are we entering the build? Maybe I don't understand something. Where are we entering the building current, or I mean,
Well,
where would we enter your proposed second floor addition now?
Where are we entering it? We're entering
Yes.
it from the rear of
From
the
the
building.
rear? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I
Yes.
thought so. All right.
Sorry to confuse you.
Okay. So,
So your question was the location of the terrace.
right. Were there any other considerations for placement of the terrace? Why or why not?
There wasn't any other real consideration because we didn't want it on the back of the building, facing, parking and, we wanted it, actually, it seemed like a logical location to have it on the front of the building.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Kane?
I don't know where this is going to go with the commission, but that's exactly the point, is I'm not asking you if you had other thoughts, I'm asking you if you could put it in the back. The reason for that is the building is next door to a historic monument. What's its correct nomenclature? The Beckwith Building is, somebody help me out, on a registrar of historic buildings in town. And I walk both sides of the street, like from University down to almost the high school. And there are many, many mixed-use buildings in that area where there's commercial on the bottom and there's residential on the top. But they all come forward. They all come forward flush with the edifice on the commercial lower half. And I didn't find another patio overlooking Main Street. There's not a one. So I don't find a consistency in the commercial guidelines or even residential. It wouldn't be consistent with the architecture in the neighborhood. And you are surrounded by historic buildings. Is it, Joel, is it Charlie 2 Historic District? The Historic Business District?
So the property is currently Zone C2 without a landmark historic preservation overlay, but I'm looking through.
What's the
historic
designation of the Beckwith building, the Beckwith block? What's it called? I'm sorry.
It's historic.
Somebody jump in.
It is.
It's a designated landmark.
Okay.
And I've been on the commission previously for 4 years, and it would come up from time to time that this was a defining edifice. And I'm not going to design a building. I just wish it was more compatible with the Beckwith building and the one across the street from it that has the rounded turret.
With the current.
Certainly not the penthouse, but the other buildings all have commercial and residential right on the street. And there are no other terraces anywhere that I know of in that whole district from North Santa Cruz to the high school. And so that's the inconsistency I find.
Let me jump in.
And that concerns me, and I'll share that concern with you, and I'll share it with the commission and see where we go.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for opening that, but that's actually, I could ask you if you reviewed our general plan speaks a lot about, it devotes sections to preserving and maintaining our historic areas. And even though that building, that's the project here tonight, is not a contributor to the historic district, it's a non-contributor, it does fall under design guidelines for non-contributor buildings. And it means that that your building would have to, let's see, major remodeling should seek to support the historic district. And Mr. Kane is right, Commissioner Kane is right. The nature of that building, or all the historic buildings in town, is such that there are not terraces on the front of any of them. And you are adjacent to one of the historic structures in town that we do try to preserve and to make you more compatible with that neighborhood. So for that reason, that was why I asked the question, did you consider, knowing that the general plan speaks a lot about it, our design guidelines speak about it, both commercially and residential, and you sort of fall into, this project falls both into commercial and residential, as well as the general plan as far as historic is concerned. Did you read and understand what that meant? mean,
I
that's
thought I
a-
did, yeah, I did read it, and I certainly thought I understood it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a 400 square foot terrace. Now, sometimes in the front of these historic buildings, you'll find small Juliet type balconies, and that's about all you're going to find. So would have an issue with the terrace out in front, and which is why I asked, would you put it in another location? The adjacent Beckwith building put all of their decks out to the back. It's also not only the historic impact, the historic support that I think this building should have, but also it's very public out on Main Street. And I'm wondering if your client really would want to be that public with their relaxation time. And then also the material that was chosen as far as the wrought iron is really pretty see-through. The only, I will say that the only veranda or the terrace that we have in any of town is with the movie theater. And that has a terrace that looks out over Santa Cruz, but it also has controls as far as its use and what can be put out there. And we, as a town, would have no way of controlling how this would be used. And if you look at some of the other outdoor penthouse apartment patios, I've seen, exercise equipment, I've seen mannequins, I've seen recycle bins, I've seen big storage bins. We would have no way to control that. And that's not exactly the look. I mean, if you can imagine, and I'm not saying that your client shouldn't enjoy furniture, enjoying the outdoors or anything. It's just that in an area like that, and I'm making a lecture and I don't mean to.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm going to
Hanson?
stop. He answered my question, though.
Okay.
I just had, some more color to add to this. I mean, I'm sure that the current the owner wouldn't be one of these people, but I had visions of places I've walked by before, and this would be ideal for some young people to rent. People sitting out there drinking beer, smoking, playing loud music, getting their barbecue grill. I mean, I don't think that's what we want to be seeing when we're walking down Main Street. I mean, and that's kind of where my mind went. I had that vivid image of that. And I have a problem with that.
I understand that, but, my client is, he's in his 70s, and he's not going to be out there partying and drinking beer and, all that sort of thing, but.
Yeah, but we don't have control over it once it gets
understand.
approved.
All right.
I understand.
Can
It could
I
change
jump?
hands at some
Can I
point.
jump in with a couple questions then? I'm going to go on this vein, but in a very different way. While I agree with the idea of the terrace in the front, I actually like the differential in the planes because this isn't a historic building,
Right.
and then it sits next to a single story. So while I agree with the large terrace, I very much like the differential in the front planes that you did there. I want to ask a couple logistical questions on the terrace in the back, though, so that as we go on this conversation that it's my understanding for access, you have to go up the stairs a certain amount. We need to have a landing, and then it has to return.
I saw
correct?
that, yes, in the conditions, yes.
Okay. I'm also noticing that since we're relocating mechanical equipment and the back part of this residence sits over the kitchen, we're relocating exhaust.
Yes.
So I want to make sure if we're going to discuss putting a terrace on the back, that those two items definitely get addressed. I would hate for someone to sit out on this back terrace and be dealing with kitchen
Well,
exhaust.
That's part of the problem with the terrace being on the back of the building, is that that's over the kitchen area of the operation down below, of the restaurant. And so we do have exhaust coming up, we have a lot of penetrations in the roof there for vents and that sort of thing. So, we were trying to avoid getting into remodeling the restaurant for obvious reasons. So,
So I understand, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yep.
But I do know you're probably going to get a lot of pushback to put the balcony to the back, just to make sure that as we look at it, maybe those exhaust things are boxed out a bit or something, so that there is some separation between the terrace and that. I also wanted to ask some questions because we talked a bit of constructability. Obviously, you have to have a rating separation between the restaurant and the residents. You're going to be bringing in a lot of equipment. I'm going to go ahead and ask it now. I know we have another card, but since we have the opportunity now, I was wondering if I could get a very brief understanding of material storage, construction hours, how you're going to tear this space apart and rebuild it and be very sensitive to your neighbors and to the fact that you are one of the busiest intersections in town. So if, please go ahead and come up to the microphone. If that's okay if I take this way really quickly.
So as far as materials
We
coming
get-
in, we
I'm
worked
s-
with
I'm s-
Ryan.
I don't know who the speaker is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My
please
name is
state-
Mike Kondo with Kondo Construction. We actually worked on this building in 1990 after the earthquake, so I'm familiar with, we've done a lot of work downtown. We've had the privilege of working downtown. We also did the remodel of the Beckwith building at the same time. The same owner owned both of them at that time. So what we are working with the town, the engineering department, we're going to be confined to the hours we can bring materials in. We're going to be using no larger than 16-foot trucks and flaggers, just like we always do, and we'll be working off, we won't be working in the morning, we won't be bringing materials in the morning or in the afternoon when all the school traffic is there. We're very familiar with that. So we'll bring them in, we unload we have flaggers to stop. We won't be stopping the traffic for more than a minute and a half, 2 minutes at a time. Bring the truck in, we unload it, get the truck out, and then we will disperse all the materials where we need to go. We'll be using the 2 parking spots in the back, except for on days where we're doing work on the side of the building in the alleyway. There's those 3 parking spaces we have to keep clear. So when we're doing, it's very, all the second floor walls will be constructed and finished while they're laying down. We'll do all the inspections while they're down. It's going to be, it's just the logistics of the project. We can't do scaffolding in the alleyway. So whether it's going to be stucco and thin brick, that will all be applied while the walls are down with applicable inspections, and then we will bring them up very slowly and hope we don't mess them up at that time. And so that's just the logistics. So we're very sensitive to the town's requirements. We've done it before. We've worked. We did the Rankin building also. Les Boulangers, Posh Bagels. In the Beckwith building, we did Southern Kitchen at that time. Southern Kitchen used to be on the other end of the building. Then we did it at the completion of the rehab. So we're familiar with what we need to do, and we will work within the town's
Okay, I've 2
restrictions.
quick questions. One is, tell me how you plan to relocate the mechanical equipment on the roof. I don't think you can get a crane or anything there, so how are you going to relocate the mechanical equipment to be?
With dollies and, I'm sorry, the name, just hand equipment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so as far as this plan that you've got for how you're going to do this, have you run that by both neighbors and discussed this with them to make sure that this meets their needs so they can?
We
maintain
have
this?
just so far, not personally with the neighbors. I wasn't really involved in all that at this point yet, but our normal policy is to, during the construction drawings and whatnot, we go to all our neighbors, introduce ourselves, let them know what our construction plan, and give them all our contact information. So if they have any questions at any time, they contact us. We're very open. We don't we don't want to be there any longer than they want us there. We understand that, and so we always work with our neighbors and get the job done as fast as we can with the least inconvenience to everybody.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Telesfor?
A follow-up to that, and it might seem insignificant, but what is the truck route that's taken for bringing and, coming to the site and then leaving the site?
Well, we just have two choices, either East Main Street or Santa Cruz Avenue.
Right. So I would,
We've used, normally they come in, the most popular, per se, is Santa Cruz Avenue.
really, big trucks, instead of,
No, they're not, we're not using, like I said, we're gonna limit them to 16-foot flatbed trucks.
okay, so,
We're not bringing in big tractor trailers, and
Okay.
we've done all this, we know we keep it to a minimum.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I do have a speaker card here from Hennessy Zander. Did I say that correctly? Okay. So you have 3 minutes. Make sure you state your name for the record, and then when the yellow light comes on, you have 30 seconds, and when the red light comes on, it's 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's Hennessy Zander. I'm representing my mother. Her name's Harriet Zander, and she owns the property next door, which is 23 East Main Street. She just had some concerns, as did I, just about the safety of just speaking with Marnie, just looking over the plans. We just had some questions about that, the wall that is next to my mom's building on 23 East Main, and how that was going to be erected. And it was our understanding that it was going to be built off-site and then brought in, but it sounds like it's going to be built there and then just lifted up. Just safety-wise, we had some questions as to how that would, and I don't know construction, so that's why we just wanted to kind of get clarification about, just because my mom's building is just in such close vicinity to their building, what kind of safety efforts would be made to just prevent anything from falling on my mom's roof, that building's roof. And I had one other question just about where do all of the construction people park their trucks and cars, not just the for the supply drop-offs, but just everyday construction, because I know that there's probably going to be a lot of guys and girls maybe working there. So just how that works logistically. Yeah.
Actually, no,
Okay.
it's not that dialogue, sorry. Okay,
Those were our main concerns.
Okay.
So.
any questions, Commissioner Kane?
As I look at the subject building, your building is tangent to the left?
To the right. Oh, sorry, yes, looking at the building.
As I
to
look at the
left,
building,
yeah.
you're on, and they're two separate buildings, they just,
The-
share a common wall, or they have two walls?
They are separated, but I don't know when they did this, but at some point they just closed up the front part so that I don't know what I think it's less than a foot difference. I know, I don't know the distance between those buildings, but it's very close.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I just wanted to, just so we can clarify. So have you sat with the applicant, architect, or anybody, and looked at these, gone through plans, gone through elevations, how this is going to look? Obviously, you don't know the construction plan, but have you met with them? Or has your mother?
Myself and my husband, we've gone down to look at the plans, but we've talked with Marnie, and that's pretty much it, as far as how everything's going to be built. So.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Thank you. At this point, the applicant usually has 3 minutes to reply to any comments that they've heard or clarify anything.
Well, we did have some dialogue with the Zanders earlier on. We were hoping, as part of our construction strategy, to use part of their parking lot for parking and to actually be able to access their roof to use more conventional means to build our walls that face their building. But they were uncomfortable with all of that. So we came up with these alternate methods. So we have discussed things with them. We haven't actually sat down and gone through the plans with them, but there has been dialogue with them through the process. Regarding the orientation of the terrace, it makes it more difficult if it's on the back of the building for us, because then we have to absorb square footage to get from the back of the building to the unit that would be closer to the front of the building. Architecturally, I think that would be strange just to have an enclosed walkway that gets you there. Architecturally, I'm not real fond of that whole idea, but and I think the fact that our building is different from the historical buildings in the neighborhood, just inherently different. We didn't want to get into redesigning the whole front of the building, so we were trying to design something that was compatible with what's there and harmonious with the building that's there. And so that's where we ended up with the terrace on the front of the building and so forth. So I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have any, but.
So Commissioner Telesford and Commissioner Kane.
Sorry. Regarding the terrace, you didn't consider any other options. I'm just throw something out there like an atrium somewhere in the center or somewhere else off the site, just an idea. Anyway, I'm not a designer, but that's an option. But also I wanted to address the front slider doors that really give the building a more of a modern look. And do you think you would be able to come up with a door that maybe isn't quite so barren as that? That looks pretty modern to me in this building. And the thing that you have to worry, this is not a historic building. You're absolutely right. But it's in a historic area.
I understand.
And that's the point.
I understand.
So we try our hardest to continue that ambiance, that street ambiance when you're across the street or in front of it. You want it to look like it was been there for a while. So although it's a nicely designed building, just not for me, I would like to see it just a little more traditional in that regard.
So are you suggesting that as part of this, that we address the front of the existing building and give that more of a historical context?
Just the part you're adding. Just the part you're adding. I mean, I would.
So it would not necessarily be compatible with the ground floor architecturally. It would be more compatible with the neighboring buildings? Just design sense tells me that we don't want to put something that's out of context with the lower level on top of that building.
I would suggest we start with the veranda, because I think that would be very difficult to get the commission, maybe I'm jumping ahead, for us to approve a veranda out in front. So as far as trying to redesign and address Commissioner Telesford, it might not even be a point where we might want you to redesign it so that there is no veranda in the front, because that's out of character. Completely. There's nothing like that. In fact, even having a veranda to the rear, I don't see anything like that either. I see balcony decks, maybe that are about 3 feet, wide, but I don't see any of that. And I work downtown on North Santa Cruz Ave, so I've walked up and down and made my observations, and there's nothing like it.
Well, we are limited on square footage, so I mean, we can't cover the whole second floor so that we don't have open area on one end or the other.
Okay, I realize about the square footage, but then why are 3 bedrooms needed when it's just an apartment? Because that's another issue. I don't see any 3-bedroom apartments in that area either. They're usually just a 1 or a 2-bedroom.
Well, there's nothing that says we can't have 3
That
bedrooms.
is true.
But there's the bedroom for the owner. There's his office. He runs a business that's downstairs, so he wants to have an office there. And they want a guest room for guests. I mean, it's not You know, it's not over the top
I'm
in
just
terms of
suggesting if
floor
you
area.
want to, you know, as far as giving in square footage, that might be one way to do it in the redesign. Just a suggestion.
As far as giving him square footage, I didn't follow what you're saying.
Reducing a bedroom. You said you're trying to work around the square footage.
No, well, we're limited on square footage.
Correct.
And so if we're going to design the second floor all the way out to the front facade of the building to be compatible with the Beckwith building and whatever, we can't cover the whole building. So we still got to enter from the back. So we have to get up to that. We have to get from the back of the building up toward the front of the building. And that's taking square footage for that transition to happen, is my point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments? Commissioner Kane, then Commissioner Erickson.
I'm not I don't design buildings.
Yeah.
But if you've got this and you move it this, you keep the same square footage, don't
Yeah,
you?
but you got to get to this. If it's on the front of the building, you have to get to it from the back of the building
You mean to
so-
access it?
to access it.
Well, you said a covered walkway, and I was thinking of a back store that led, a back stairway that led to the porch, that led to the main door, solid security door of the abode.
So you're saying walk up the
With the-
stairs and you get onto the veranda or
On the
whatever it
veranda
is?
and go to the front door in that case.
All right.
And I think that because I think it's important that there be compatibility with the neighborhood. I know it's not the form of a question, but the chairperson and I learned our trade under the legendary Len Pacheco, who serves as the chairperson of the Historic Preservation Committee for the town, and has done so since President Lincoln appointed him. And he called me with great concern for the Beckwith building and the historic nature of Main Street, and said, you know, that I should examine the law, the ordinance, the et cetera, to see if I could be persuasive about not having a patio out there. Everybody who reacts to that patio has the same fantasy, that in 50 years, during the Christmas parade, there's going to be 500 young people up there having a hell of a time and thanking me for having done it. What? I don't mean to be insensitive. I love the whole story, the whole reason you want to do it. You know, I want to find a way to do it, but I can't do it with a party patio.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Erickson.
I guess the first comment I would make is I appreciate your patience and your patience. 4 years is a long time to work on anything. And I hope that the intended occupants haven't been homeless in some period of that, well, they've been waiting for 4 years for it to happen, but and I appreciate your continued patience this evening while we pushed you to the back and then spent an hour or so. So I actually think it's not incompatible to have some recessing of the second floor back. The setback of the second floor is desirable. No, that's that's a different issue than having the terrace on the front. No matter what I think about the terrace, it's highly improbable that this planning commission would go for a terrace on the front of the building at this point in time. There's a challenge that you have to maintain that I can't figure out is to maintain the desirable square footage while still maintaining some recessing. And I'm not sure that if you really brought the second floor out to the front, that people would like that design either, for a whole series of reasons, because it would be difficult to maintain the look of the lower level with some design of the second level if you brought the second level out, but I'm not trying to tell you your business. So I think there are challenges that you have. I'm likely to, in a moment, introduce a motion to continue this item, so I would encourage the commission to give you clear direction if we do that, so that we will be able to see you in a shorter period of time than 4 years from now.
Thank you very much.
With the continuation. When we continue to a date certain, I don't want that date certain to be in 2019.
Do we have any other questions of the applicant? All right, I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing. Thank you very much. And based on the conversations we've had, I'm going to ask if any of my fellow commissioners want to make a motion. Commissioner Erickson?
I would like to request that the chair reopen the public hearing for a single purpose, and that given that we haven't necessarily been clear with our direction yet, but I think probably the spokesman for the client has some sense of the flavor. So he'll need to help us understand, will it take him a year, 4 years, a month, a week to do what he needs to do to bring, if they choose to do that, to bring a different design forward?
What we can do amongst ourselves is talk a little bit to make sure that we're all on the same page with the clear direction, and then I will briefly open the public portion again to make sure that timeline-wise that works with our applicant. Yes.
Okay, I'd like to move that we continue the item to a date to be determined after we reopen the public hearing to ask the consultation of the applicant and their advisors what general period of time they might need to do that.
Okay. Do we have a second, or would we like to have some additional conversation amongst ourselves on what that direction is going to be? So I would like to ask each one of you, please, to give me some feedback on what you would be looking for in this application, so that when we reopen this, it's very, very clear to the applicant what we want to see. Okay. So Commissioner Tausfer.
So I would second the motion for purposes of discussion. Okay, so I'll second that motion.
That's what actually my intent was.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioner Badami.
I don't, do we need to continue, my question is, do we need to continue it if the specific direction was that there should not be a terrace on the front, and it still needs to meet the architecture and site considerations and so on and so forth? Couldn't that be condition approval as opposed to continuing, or is that too much of a change?
I think I personally would like to see it again, because I don't know that we're all on the exact same page on what that means with each other. So I think that that's going to be a bit vague. So Commissioner Badami, why don't you start off with your idea of direction?
I'm not opposed to a residence up there. I think that would be a great thing. However, I could not approve a veranda in the front. I'll be very clear on that. And I don't like the idea of the sliders in the front. So that's what I would be looking for.
Okay, Commissioner Tausfer?
And I'm going to echo the same thing since I brought it up. I think it's a great idea to have a residence up there, and quite frankly, it really almost balances out the Beckwith building. It really adds a little more interest to our skyline, so I think that's perfectly fine. But yes, please eliminate the front terrace and make sure that the windows are in keeping with the historic nature of the area.
Commissioner Hanson, do you have any additional comments to make?
I have no additional comments. That's the direction I would give as well.
Okay, Commissioner Erickson?
So I would like to as great extent as possible for you to maintain the integrity of the existing building, the lower level as you design the second floor, while being respectful of the district in which it's in. I think it's probably a foregone conclusion that we don't want a terrace on the front of the building. Whether or not there's a terrace at all or not is between you and your client, and where it's located, et cetera, and how you deal with the allocation of square footage, and that's something for you to do. But it seems like to me it's a great idea. You worked hard at a design. You gave it your best shot. You finally got it to us, and you got the feedback. You're getting the feedback that hopefully you will need in order to move this forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane, any additional comments?
No, just take the opportunity to say I'm somewhat familiar with the Rankin building work and Lou Bongeray. And what they did you should take a look at what they've done in the past. I appreciate your concerns, your mom's concerns. They have worked in those sensitive areas before, and you might meet with them further to detail your fine work in the past and see if a better arrangement could be agreed to before you come back and see us again.
Okay, and then my comments to that are going to be a couple things. I completely agree with Commissioner Erickson. I want you to maintain, I like the existing structure. I personally, while I agree with the idea of the terrace, I do like the setback between the lower level and the back, because there is a single story on one side and a two-story on the other. It does a little bit of a facade breakup. So I'm by no means saying let's recreate the entire front facade. I think the setback or the step back to the second story was very nice. Just obviously not as large. And then I would also ask, before you came back, that I would like to hear that you had a meeting with your adjacent neighbors about your construction plan. I think that you're going to get a lot of feedback. That's a sensitive area. And I think you're going to need to do a little bit of outreach there and make sure. I certainly don't want you to have spent 4 years, come back, and then your big obstacle is going to be your neighbors. So I'd like to see that done before you come back too. Commissioner Kane?
One concern, Madam Chair. When you say setback, I would support that if it evolved, that was the emotion, as long as, if this is a word, as long as it was not it was a non-ambulatory setback.
Okay. Okay. I would have never thought
Narrow
of that word.
enough that I would
have
not
never
go
thought
out
of that
there with
word,
a
but-
chair.
Okay. Okay, so at this moment, I'm going to take a brief moment to reopen the public portion of the hearing, because we would like your feedback. So if the applicant could please come back up to the podium. And based on what you're hearing, obviously we want to set a date. Could you give us some feedback on timing for this?
Timing, I think, is going to be, we're at least 4 to 6 weeks to get this turned around and back to you.
Yeah, so that takes us to the July 22nd meeting.
Yeah.
Is July 22nd?
You just need overnight, don't you?
Well, no, and so we can go later. I'm trying to be sensitive to all of you. If a better time is August 12th. Yeah, thank you. Even with my glasses. If Commissioner Erickson?
As the maker of the motion, may I ask the staff, Mr. Paulson, would August the 12th or August the 26th work better from your perspective?
With the current agendas, either option is available.
I'd like to, I need to let you close the public portion of the hearing again.
So if those dates are acceptable,
12th or 26th of August?
yes.
Yeah, I don't know how much time you need, but yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to, again, close the public portion of the hearing and ask the maker of the motion to.
I'd like to amend my motion to make it the 12th of August.
And does that work for the seconder of the motion?
It does, much better. Thank you.
All right. Any additional, oh, sorry.
And I would mention your commissioner that was not able to attend will be able to hear this item. The law was changed in the last year, and you don't count the common areas for a condominium development any longer. So he is not, I don't believe he's within the 500-foot rule. That was just changed in May, and he didn't realize that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Good.
still might be, you think?
Well, yeah, we'll have to look.
But you don't go all the way from the property area. You just do the condo.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, do we have, let's call him. So- We're fine. Okay, if we don't have any additional comments, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. This passes unanimously. I assume since the continuation, we don't have any appeal.
Correct.
All right. Last couple items, Ms. Pravetti? Do we
Thank
have
you.
a report?
The council has met twice since your last meeting on May 19th. The council met and approved the tree protection ordinance, with kudos to the Planning Commission for your excellent work on that ordinance. In addition, they heard the appeal of the Santella Court property that you also heard. That was appealed all the way back up to council. It was remanded back to you with direction for a new visibility analysis. So we are working with that applicant. We have no dates of when the analysis will be complete, but you will be seeing it again. And on June 2nd, the council met and continued the North 40 specific plan discussion to Wednesday, June 17th, a week from today. So that will be a special meeting. And the Union Avenue appeal was continued to next Tuesday, June 16th. Again, that was an item that came to you and was then appealed to the full council. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you. Do we have any other commission matters to discuss? If not, meeting is adjourned.